When can we get you a full leaflet?
I think some point next week.
Got any delivered yet? Delivered any yet?
No, I've been busy. Well, good evening, members. Before I formally open the meeting, can I ask any members or officers in physical attendance with an electronic device to mute it to avoid feedback? And any remote participants, can you keep your camera and microphone off unless you wish to speak? And ideally, don't use the camera facility at all, as this can affect the quality of the IT connection. The meeting will be recorded, and data collected during the recording of the meeting will be retained in accordance with the Council's data retention policy. The recording of the meeting may be added to the Council's website. Members accessing the meeting remotely should use their Swelborough Council or Kent County Council laptop to participate virtually. If you join using the link on the website or on a mobile and tablet device, it is not possible to identify you, and you will not be recorded as being in remote attendance. Members can ask you to speak loudly and clearly into your microphones and switch your microphone off after speaking, otherwise remote participants may be unable to hear the next speaker. Welcome everyone to this Policy and Resources Committee meeting, including visiting members that we have online and any members of the public. And a welcome, of course, to all of our staff. There's been a significant change to the membership, and following the publication of the agenda, the membership has changed and the following members no longer sit on this committee. Councillors Monique Bonney, Derek Carnell and Peter Marchington. The new committee members are Councillor Ben J. Martin, Kieran Mishuk and Richard Palmer. Officers in attendance this evening are our Chief Executive, Larissa Reid, in person, Director of Resources, Lisa Fillery, Head of Finance and Procurement, Claire Stanbury, Director of Regeneration and Neighbourhood, Emma Wiggins, remotely, Policy and Engagement Officer, Janet Dart, in person, Auditor and Systems Officer, Georgia Harvey, in person, Audit and Planning Manager, Mark Goodwing, in person, and our Monitoring Officer, Robin Harris, in person. Head of Environment and Leisure, Martin Cassell, in person. Head of Place, Joanne Johnson, joining us remotely. Community Services Manager, Steph Curtis, joining us remotely. And Democratic Services Officer, Kelly Mackenzie, of course, here in person. There is no fire drill planned, and if the alarm sounds, those in attendance should leave via the exits indicated and assemble outside where directed. Do not use a lift, and please ask anyone in attendance that requires assistance to make themselves known. So, therefore, I am. Okay. Are there any apologies for absence? And substitutes, please.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies from Councillors Mark Last, who is in attendance remotely, and his substitute is Councillor Karen Watson. Councillor Lloyd Bowen, his substitute is Councillor Peter Marchington. Councillor Ben J. Martin, his substitute is Councillor Hannah Perkin. Councillor Kieran Mishuk, and his substitute is Councillor Chris Palmer, and Councillor Julian Speed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, can we approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 5th of February 2025, minute numbers 613 to 628 as a true record? Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest, pecuniary or non-pecuniary? Thank you, members. We now move to item 5 on the agenda, which is the annual update on the corporate plan actions. And I think our officer to introduce that one for us. Thank you.
Good evening. Following the May 2023 borough election, the administration developed a corporate plan which set out their vision and ambition for the borough for the period 2023 to 2027. The corporate plan was adopted by Council on the 3rd of April 2024. The report this evening provides an update on the actions in the corporate plan. Out of 59 actions, 43 are RAG rated as green, 6 of which are completed and 37 are on track for completion. 13 are rated as amber, where they may have changed or the timeline has been revised, but they are still on track for delivery. 2 are rated as red, where they are on hold or significantly behind schedule with a risk of non-delivery or not started. 1 action has been rated as both amber and red. Members are invited this evening to note and discuss the update as presented at Appendix 1 of the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Janet. Members, any questions, observations? Councillor Baldock, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I was disappointed with 1.14, which is to engage with schools to inform young people about democracy and the work of the council. Just seems that we're just not getting much buy-in from the schools, which I think is a shame. We have also raised the issue of decreasing turnout at Swale elections, where we are one of the lowest in Kent. This would have been a step towards trying to get engagement again. Is there anything else we can do that to encourage schools to actually want to encourage their pupils to take part in the democracy process?
Thank you. From a personal perspective, I honestly think there's something that we can do, and that perhaps should fall at my feet in the first instance to get out there and get up to the schools, meet the heads of department, and see that we can get some inroads in there. Thank you. Councillor Perkin.
Thank you. Yeah, my point was also on 1.14. I was wondering whether the devolution programme gives us an opportunity to reach out to schools and just talk about how local government functions and what's going to change, and kind of encourage the kids to be part of that conversation about their sense of place and how they feel about their services, because they are obviously going to grow into a position where they are reliant on council services themselves. So it might be, talking to the sixth forms about what's happening and how they can be involved in the process might be helpful, because they're obviously not going to get an opportunity to feed that back themselves potentially. So that would be just make the most of an opportunity, I suppose.
Wise words. Councillor Hunt.
Thanks. I was going to raise on this same point as well, but I just wonder what actual project options have been provided to local schools. Is it a case that the options that been put forward are ones that actually are no good for the schools, or have we got any feedback to say why they're not coming forward? Because we used to have the Swale Youth Forum, which was really well attended, and that was great to have the mayor here talking to the schools, and the majority of schools, even if they couldn't make every single one, were turning up. They were regular meetings and they did work well and they were well attended. So is it that the options aren't the right ones that we're putting forward?
Thank you. I've got Steph Curtis online. Steph, can I bring you in?
Yep, good evening, everyone. It was my team that actually tried to undertake this piece of work with schools, so it's probably best for me to comment. And we put forward a number of different options. One was around the provision of a toolkit for the schools to do something themselves, sort of in-house, The second was to have their local ward councillor come into the schools to again do some kind of sort of input. And the third was to arrange sort of a one-off type youth forum event where we invited schools in to set up a mock polling station. Unfortunately, despite sort of numerous different attempts with the schools, we did struggle to get any kind of buy-in in any shape or form. Unfortunately, we didn't even get sort of the feedback around the various different options which we asked for. I think although the youth forum engagement was really good pre-COVID, sort of post-COVID, we again struggled to get the buy-in from the schools to physically come along, which is why we agreed to review what model we put into place. But I'm happy to take back to the team some of the comments that have already been raised tonight to see if there's something else that we can help support to do, particularly either around the LGR process or if there's anybody that's willing to sort of go directly into schools, we can certainly offer that up again.
Thank you. Councillor Harrison.
Thanks, Chair, and through you to the officer. Will we hook into other bodies to see what they might be doing, to see whether we can hook in to anything? Because we're not alone here. I mean, I know other areas of public service are looking at how they can engage with young people on various fronts. Thanks.
Thank you. Steph, did you want to comment for us, please?
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly something we can consider. We, again, as a team, we are looking at a broader range of options around engagement with school on lots of different subjects. Yeah, whether we can link in an element of democracy into anything that either we might look at or partners might look at, again, we can certainly look at that.
Thank you. Councillor Joes.
Thank you, Chair. I'm glad to see that most of the community targets are on track. One that's lumped in here is comms. Yes, we've got comms strategy, but I think we need to already be looking to review it. We need to be upping our offering on how we communicate with the public and just a wider offering. I think we need to be helping our partners out, including perhaps the Leisure Centre. We should be sharing what they do, especially as going forwards. Hopefully we can get some money back if they're doing well. Also in other areas, solar panels, it says we're on track. We should be looking at getting them on the Leisure Centre because that means that the energy costs that we have to pay going forwards are cheaper, and that's a better offering when it comes to tendering. We want the best offer we can get. We want the maximum money coming back to the council. Breaking even's a nice option, but if we can maximise the revenue coming back to us, even better. Further on in the environment, we've got QR codes on bins. I'm looking forward to that. I think it'll help. It'll be easier to report. It'll be quicker to report items. Although the contract seems to be getting under control on certain items, it mentions further review of street cleansing required. Well, if we could just get sewers to do what they're meant to, that would be a start. Our streets are still a mess. I'm still waiting for all these unicorns we were promised in the contract briefings to appear. I have hope. Further on, environment response team investigating a large range of issues. I think we definitely need to do better in that. The fact we only issued 8 fly tipping fines in the last 2 years shows we need to do better at that. Blimey, I wish every fine was issued for fly tipping in my ward because there's definitely been more than 8 in them 2 years. And I think that is... Oh, another one is working to maximise the rates of income on all commercial council properties. We need to be going further and faster on that. We've needed to be going further and faster on that for years, but we've got 2 empty toilet blocks that haven't been open for the last 10, 15 years, and they're still sitting on our books, and they're costing us. They're not an asset, they're a liability. There's certain things we need to get shifted and get shifted soon, or rent them out. You know, but someone might want to run a cafe out there. There's all sorts of ideas what people do. Bars in London, the old underground toilets, they rent out and maximise their revenue. So we need to be thinking outside the box.
Thank you. Councillor Wise.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just going back to 1.14, I just wondered whether it could be looked at a slightly different way as well, or about what we do with members so that their offer to the schools that are in their local areas. They are well equipped to go out. I mean, I'm quite involved with the primary school in Kemsley and have attended and, you know, had questions from their school council about what it means to be a counsellor and, you know, whether I'm a celebrity or not and all of this sort of stuff. You know, it's really engaging, it's interesting, but maybe there's stuff that we need to look at from that side so that we can go out, there's 47 of us, while we're still in existence, to make the most of this. So rather than it just being the council going out to schools, you know, lots of councillors already have good relationships with schools in their ward, and you know, if we know that National Democracy Week's coming up, for example, what can we do to prepare and brief and support members so that they can make that offer to schools that are in their patch?
Thank you. All right, members, can we agree to note this report then, please? Thank you very much indeed. We'll move on to item 6 then, which is the Corporate Peer Challenge Action Plan. And again, I'll thank our officer to introduce this one for us.
Thank you, Chair. In March 2023, Swell Borough Council undertook a local government association corporate peer challenge. The peer team consisted of cross-party members and senior officers from other local authorities. The peer challenge team provided a detailed feedback report containing 10 key recommendations, which can be viewed via the link in the appendices section of the report. Members and senior officers considered the recommendations and together developed an action plan which members of the Policy and Resources Committee agreed on the 18th of October 2023. The report this evening presents an update on those actions for members to note and discuss. 9 of the 10 recommendations are RAG rated as green and 1 recommendation contains actions rated as amber. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Members, any comments or observations? Councillor Jays, please.
Thank you, Chair. It won't surprise you, I'm interested in focusing on comms. I'm just scrolling down to find it. It mentions about effective flow of information both externally with residents and internally. Again, I think we need to go further and faster. And externally, businesses, there's a couple of business groups been set up on the island in the past year. I think we need to be tapping into them. They want to work with us. They want to deliver a better borough. I worked alongside a lot of them on the Sheppey Light Railway track a few weekends ago. Businesses giving their time for free for the good of the community, so we need to get them in. Action 8.5 is about developing a diary of cultural events and awareness days. I'd like to see that ASAP, whether it's for a comms working group. I believe we needed a lead member for comms for a long time because comms could do with a slight tweak.
Thank you. Councillor Worcester, please.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies for my lateness this evening. That was due to childcare, unfortunately. So on 7.4, I noticed that's an amber rating, and I'd like to know a little bit more about the apprenticeship levy with businesses and the unspentness of that, because when I speak to my secondaries and my further education college over on Sheppey, they're all in favour of moving students through businesses and looking at apprenticeships, and I think there's a real market for using apprenticeships as another way of moving people into employment, and so it surprises me that we've got an unspent levy there. One such officer over at the FE College consistently contacts me and says that they're always in the market for improving relationships between businesses and education, and I think that's a real opportunity. So if that can be, any light can be put on that with reassurance that not only are we looking at businesses for that approach, we're also looking at schools, and even neat education providers, that would be fantastic. And I'd also like to highlight, for example, the head teacher over at Westland School. I know, for instance, they are very much in favour of that, and they do bring that to a lot of meetings that I attend, along with, for instance, Donna Swarbrick over at the FE College on Sheppey, and of course January and Matt over at Lee and EKC are all in the market for those sort of opportunities. So it'd be lovely to hear that they're being included in that conversation as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
So the apprenticeship levy is underspent. Members took a decision, I think about 3 years ago, that we pay our apprenticeships the real living wage. That does two things. You can't use the apprenticeship levy for the salary, only the training. So we are paying the salaries of our apprentices. That means that does limit the numbers because it is a real living wage salary, which on one hand is really positive, and the reason that members wanted to bring it in was because often for the poorest families they put off becoming an apprentice because you can get a better wage at a supermarket, or so actually on the apprentice wage, which at the time was in the region of £4 to £5, not a lot, members didn't agree. The unintended consequence of that is our apprenticeships are very popular, and we get a lot of graduates applying for apprentices because of the real living wage job as an apprentice is really good. So there is an issue about, by opening it, trying to make it a fair living wage with a limited number, actually some of those people we're not getting in a competitive thing. So that's one of the problems, and we're looking to see how we can do that. But the largest problem that we have is if the apprenticeship levy could be used for the salary as well as the training, we would spend our apprenticeship levy every year. But with a finite amount of money, where we have services that are making cuts, to have an apprentice on a real living wage that is not at the level that maybe somebody else is, that's a really difficult thing for us to do. So we are completely supportive. We do have quite a few departments do have apprentices who are doing unbelievably well, but the problem is that the restrictions on the levy. What we are looking at doing is seeing if we can offer our unused levy out to businesses that might be able to afford, that we can provide the cost of the training and they provide the cost of the salary. But again, all businesses have the same issue that we do. So fundamentally, we'd quite like the levy to change, that we could use it to fund more, the full cost of more apprentices.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson, do you want to come back?
Just really quickly, that all sounds really positive actually, and I think there is if you can identify a need, then that seems like a conversation worth exploring. But again, I'll draw it back to the conversation I've been having in lots of meetings since I got elected, is that also we need to be doing more, for example, to look at work experience, so that actually we're growing that interest in what we can offer, and also the contact with towns and parishes, because I know that as they grow, quite a number of them speak to me about wanting to offer apprenticeships within their remit, and that could be something where Swale offer quite a professional model that could be copied by other organisations. So I'm pleased to see it this evening. Even though it's on an amber, it's nice that we can actually raise it and talk about it in a public meeting, because it's that sort of thing that I think will provide a legacy, whatever this council turns into. Thank you.
We do an awful lot of work on work experience. We send our younger, cooler staff out to careers fairs at the schools. I've offered to go, but apparently I'm not a great sell. We even try and take some freebies that we can give out to kind of raise it. We do have applications for people that want to do work experience, and we manage those. kind of centrally, so to give everybody the fare that it just happens to be if you're the child of a council employee you get to do work experience here. We've moved away from that to let anybody who wants to apply. What we do ask is that we ask that people apply themselves, that we want to understand what they're interested in, and within the limits of age and what we can do, we try and enable people to do as much as they want to in the places. So, for example, you know, if you've got a sixth former, we can send them out with the homelessness team. If you've got someone that's 14, that's much harder. So, you know, we do try and do that and give people a really good understanding. And we always try to get them to go to planning to tell them what a fantastic job planning is. That's still a little bit of a work in progress.
There'll be a lot of work in progress. Councillor Gibson, please.
Thank you, Chair. On that theme, particularly around town and parish councils, of Faversham has previously had apprentices and are advertising for another one. So I was wondering if there was any more we could do, perhaps working with our smaller towns and parishes that perhaps aren't quite in the financial position to do that, to see if there might be more room for partnership working on that, because without overly blowing Faversham's trumpet, it's worked really well. You know, our apprenticeships who have worked predominantly in the green spaces and in our environment have made a huge impact in the town already, and are hoping to continue to do so. So it is a really powerful project, which would be great to share with our colleagues across the borough if possible.
Thank you. Councillor Hunt, please.
Thanks. I want to raise some points on 2.1, 2.2 and 2.4. These are the shared values between officers and members. And they're all in green, but reading the commentary, nothing's actually moving forward. It's all on hold. It's waiting for work to be done. And when we've had on 2.1 the values workshops in December 23, all staff event in June 24, and the last thing seems to be an all staff webinar in September 24. So what can we do to move this forward? Because this seems like something that we should be really getting sorted and getting done. And if I was personally officers at those times that are thinking this is a good thing moving forward, they're probably thinking as members we don't really care about it because it's not going anywhere. So what can we do to get it moving?
So we have undertaken some work around officer member relations already. I'm just trying to find the date in my diary. We are setting up meetings with members to talk about the joint values. The date has been set, I just can't find it, but we'll find that and make sure, and I think that's gone to, certainly I need to check as soon as I find it, but making sure that's gone to all the right members. Then once we've met with the members to say, kind of this is the process, we want to have a piece of work that's going to come in quick succession on a workshop with members talking about the values that are important to members. There is still a piece of work we need to do around building trust and officer member relations and trust, and that's a piece of work that we've tried to start and hasn't had a huge success, so we need to probably think about how we do that going forward, because I think it's something that it fluctuates. We go through periods where the relations between officers and members are very good, and then we go through periods when the officer and member relationship is really not very good, and it's about how we have it on a more even keel. But where we've tried that, it hasn't been as successful as we would have hoped, so we do need to do some more work on that.
Thank you. Councillor Perkin, please.
Thanks. Yeah, just to quickly come in on Councillor Hunt's point, it's something that I've been asked to lead on, sorting out the member discussions about values. So I'm working with Andre Bowen, who is the Service Improvement Project Manager, to look at dates for that. Essentially, we're just trying. I need to set up a meeting with him next week, and then we need to organise it around the Highstead inquiry, just so there's enough room for members. So it is looking like April there'll be the first of those workshops. So just to reassure, there is stuff happening. My point was on the 8 point. Sorry, apologies. It's because I went on to speak about that. 8.5. Councillor Jay's quite rightly raised that we haven't got a kind of calendar of cultural events, and I noted within the kind of the blurb that it says that the organisation will support in meaningful way to avoid tokenism. I think we just need to not worry about perfect being an enemy of the good with it, because at the moment we celebrate all of the Christian festivals as an organisation on social media, but we're not celebrating with members of our community who are celebrating their cultural days on different days of the year. So I don't think we need to reinvent the wheel with what we're going to be celebrating. I think we just need to put our calendar together and crack on with it. We've got a style guide that we use anyway, so it shouldn't be too complicated just to factor in different cultural days through the year. And, you know, we might not always get it 100% right, but it's better to start somewhere.
Thank you. Councillor Baldock, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. On that one, I mean, we did highlight this a year ago to see there's no steer. Has anybody asked anyone? You know, you just say no steer on which days to include. What attempts has there been to find one, to ask people to submit? It's just one of those things that, you know, the council indicated it wanted to do, and then nobody followed it up. So I'm surprised that one's green. The other one I was a bit concerned about, I think it's 1.3, 2.3. We will provide training in neurodivergence. Webinars were delivered January 2024. That's over a year ago. Is that the end of our attempts to give more understanding, to deliver greater accessibility for neurodivergence? Is that it? Is that the box ticked, or is there more work to be done? Because I think, personally, there is more work to be done. We're seeing more people in this council coming forward with neurodivergence. We should be responding to that. So I just think that, again, webinars of 2024 isn't job done.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Chair. On the behaviours, was not the Minister looking at strengthening, is that the right word? Strengthening our codes and all the rest of it, including giving us some decent sanctions. We need to make sure that we don't actually do anything that might be contradictory to what he might be putting out. I'm not privy to what he might be putting out. I just thought I would flag it up.
Thank you. I'll just ask our legal officer to and our monitoring officer to respond.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so the Standards Committee was doing work on our own arrangements for dealing with standards and complaints, and paused that work because of the intervention of the Minister. And then the next step the Standards Committee took was to then actually respond to the government consultation on standards, which has been done relatively recently. We're now waiting feedback from the government in relation to the responses to that consultation.
Thank you. So, members, can we note that report? Thank you very much. We now move on to item 7, which is the risk management update. And I'll thank our officer at the other end of the table to introduce it for us. Thank you.
Good evening, members. For the purpose of this report, the committee is asked to consider the Council's corporate risks and the overall risk profile to gain assurance that key risks are being appropriately managed. To support this, this report provides an update on risk management covering quarters 3 and 4. The report starts on page 47 of the agenda pack, with the main content starting on page 51. The format of the report has changed since it was last presented in November 2024, based on feedback from members and officers. The main changes are the inclusion of a dashboard to show all risk matrices on a single page to facilitate comparative data analysis. That's on page 53. Summary narrative on the main changes to risks over the last quarter, also on page 53. A table to show the changes to the unmitigated ratings at the end of each quarter for each risk on the corporate risk register has been included on page 63. Turning to the content of the report, page 52 sets out the standard information regarding the Council's risk register, including the relevant extracts from the risk management framework to support how risks are assessed. Page 53 shows the latest position on the Council's corporate risks, as well as an overview of the operational risks. At the time the report was collated, there were 17 corporate risks, and there have been no changes to these since it was last reported in November 2024. However, since the report was published, an additional risk has been added to the corporate risk register regarding the impact of the local government reorganisation. This aligns with similar approaches in other Med-Kent authorities. Details on this risk will be included in the next update in 6 months' time. In terms of the operational risks, there are 126 risks on the risk register. The main changes since the last report are set out on the middle right of page 53 as follows. An operational risk for finance was closed, an operational risk for planning was closed, and an operational risk for digital was added. Both corporate and operational risks are routinely updated by risk owners and reported and monitored by the senior management team every quarter. This process will continue into the next financial year. At the bottom of page 53, it is worth noting that there are plans to review the risk management framework during the next financial year, and more details on this will be circulated in due course. This includes additional details on the progress of implementing plan controls, which can be seen on Appendix 2 on pages 55 to 62. And then finally, Appendix 3 on the bottom of page 63 shows changes to the corporate risks over each quarter. There have been no changes to any unmitigated risk ratings over the year. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Members, do you have any questions? Councillor Gibson, please.
I'm going to do the classic of local government, not a question really, but a comment. To say that there was an excellent training session on the risk register and the management process before this meeting that was hugely informative and very reassuring. You know, it is easy for us, I think, to get bogged down in seeing the oranges and where the outcomes are, and it was very helpful to understand the full journey we go on to get to the oranges and the greens that show us where we are. So I just wanted to thank the officers for that work. It was very influential and important training session, and very reassuring to hear that our officers are doing so well in delivering that risk register and maintaining it so regularly. So thank you for all of them on that.
Well, thank you for those comments. Councillor Layman.
Also a comment. Thank you, Chair. The training session was great, thank you. The report's very good, and I'm pleased to report that one of the controls planned, which is incomplete in here, is rewrite of climate and ecological emergency action plan following review of carbon footprint, and that was agreed probably 2 hours after this agenda was published last week, so that can be updated. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Worcester.
Much to Councillor Layman's point, actually, my question was, how dynamic is this document? Because I can even see that some of the things that have happened today are going to affect this going forward. But I thought it was a really good document, really easy to read, and I thought any member of the public could actually pick this document up if they're interested and actually look at it, get exactly what it's about, see what we're talking about, and actually maybe even refer it back to their everyday lives, which I thought was great, because that's what I'd love to see in lots of council documentation. So well done.
Thank you, and thank you for displaying enthusiasm towards what is can be a very dry subject. Thank you. Councillor Perkin.
I can't believe you'd describe a council report as dry. I just wondered about the last point on page 63 of the corporate risk movement. There is a reference to community pressure, and I just wondered what that refers to. Is that around perception? Is that around complaint monitoring? What is the community pressure part of that?
Thank you.
Thank you. We don't own the risk, so I can't give a definitive answer, but what I'll do is I'll go away and I'll speak to the risk owner and I'll drop you a message afterwards to confirm. In answer to the other question that got asked, in terms of updating of the risk register, that happens on a regular basis, so depending on the scale of risk associated with it, the officer will get an email to remind them. We'll make sure that before the next meeting, they're all updated for you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, members, are we happy with where the risks have been managed and happy to note the report? Thank you. We now move on to item 8, which is the procurement of financial management system. And I'll thank our officer to introduce it.
Thank you, Chair. The current financial management system in use at Swale has been there since 2004 and has not been re-procured in that time. We're currently operating on a rolling contract and the spend is therefore outside of our normal contractual arrangements. As with many systems used by councils these days, the supplier is looking to move all clients to the cloud, and so it has been planned for some time that a project was required for the finance system. The 2024-25 and 25-26 approved budgets included reserve funding for a replacement system and the ongoing cost to allow for fees in a cloud environment. Work has been taking place over many months to look into options to upgrade or replace the current system, and those are explained within the report. We've now reached a point where we believe that the best option is to implement the system provided by Company D, so we're seeking approval for that and to agree contractual arrangements. Additional social value is being offered if we can agree the contract by the end of the month in the form of an annual donation of £10,000 to a local charity of our choice within the borough, and that's the reason for expediting the process and bringing the report to committee this evening. The Council has agreed an ICT plan that looks to move our systems to the cloud, so this move is in line with that plan. Moving to a cloud-based system adds security layers beyond those that we could afford to implement ourselves, as well as adding resilience beyond that which we could manage on our own. The proposed new system will provide much greater functionality than we currently have and will be much more user-friendly both for finance and non-finance staff. The ease of use will allow us to develop the system to match our changing needs over time. Over the past couple of years, we have tried to look at changes to how we use our existing system to make efficiencies, but the licensing model has been prohibitive. The licensing on the system provided by Company D would have no such restrictions. Remaining with our existing supply would still see a substantial increase in annual revenue fees in line with those we'd be paying to Company D. However, there would also be significant capital costs to upgrade and move to the cloud, whereas those are subsumed within the annual charges for Company D. Both options will create a significant piece of work for the finance team, so this is the opportunity to consider all the options and choose a system that works for us now. Staying with the incumbent supply will result in our one financial management system being replaced effectively by 2.
Sorry, Claire, can you talk up a bit?
Yep. Staying with the incumbent supply will result in our current one financial management system being replaced effectively by 2, as the income management aspect of the system will be separate and provided by a third-party company. This would create the need for interfaces between systems, which brings with it risks and work in maintaining and supporting those interfaces. The proposed system will contain an income management module and will therefore be integrated within the financial management system and remove the need to create and maintain those interfaces. With local government reorganisation on the table, I appreciate that it may not seem like the time to take on such a project. However, as detailed in the report, doing nothing really isn't an option. Continuing as we are, or moving our existing arrangement to our own cloud, will leave us running an unsupported system for the foreseeable future. This would leave us vulnerable to cyber attacks and would be advised against by the likes of the National Cyber Security Council. In our opinion, this would be an unacceptable risk. We therefore have no choice but to take on a project. The options are around what way we choose to go to progress. The proposed contract is for 3 years with a 1-year extension, meaning that the contract could naturally end on the 31st of March 2028, in line with the current proposed LGR timetable, or allow us to take an option for a 1-year extension to carry us through that first year, or allow some slippage in the LGR timeline. We will also ensure that the contract contains an novation clause, allowing us to transfer the contract to the new authority if appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Harrison, please.
I was going to say I'm happy to second your moving of the proposal, but you need to move it first, and then I'll speak.
Thank you.
Sorry, were you moving the proposal?
At that point, I wasn't, but I'm prepared to. So, yeah, okay. So the proposals we have are that Company D provide a financial management system for us, and we appoint those. And secondly, that the committee agrees to backfill the systems accountant role for up to 1 year, funded by the Finance Systems Reserve.
And that's what I'm seconding. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you.
When I read this the first and second time, and indeed since, it does seem to be a bit common. Yeah, I know this does seem to be a bit common sense. Although, good luck to the finance people. Nobody likes changing systems. I know. I've been there. The only thing is, and it's nothing to do with this here, but there is something going on that's interfering with people speaking. Not me, obviously, because I did the training. I didn't know we had aircon in here. Do we have aircon? Because there's something going all the time. And the particular bit I missed was 10 grand to a charity of your choice. But I missed the bits either side of it.
Effectively, if we can get the contract over the line by the end of this month, then there will be an annual donation by Company D to a local charity of our choice, and that's £10,000 per year of the contract, to a local charity within the borough.
Sorry, Chair, and that would come back to members to be put the names in the hat, would it? Okay, fine, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Gibson, please.
My question is on the same topic, because obviously I'm so much closer to Claire, so I could hear her over. But that whole sentence makes me a little bit queasy, if I'm honest. I'm not totally sure. If we were running a project and we had a time frame, what was the initial time frame we were proposing to do this in, and therefore what is the what have we chosen not to do by considering the I won't use a B word that ends in E, but that's broadly the vibe I'm getting.
So there wasn't a specific timeline set out. I would say the donation wasn't a factor in deciding who to go with. It's purely basically knocked it up my to-do list, is what I would say. We knew that we had this piece of work to do, that it was going to be a large project, and that we need to do it very, very soon, to be fair. It would most likely have come to this committee in June rather than tonight.
Thank you. Councillor Baldock, please.
Thank you. Following on a similar tact to Councillor Gibson, it's been worked on for several months. I don't recall, and I may have missed it because it's obviously an exciting topic that I would love to read more about, but I don't recall any conversations with members. This is £500,000, best part of. To then be asked to agree this and basically be told if you don't do it tonight, you'll lose 10,000 quid to charities, feels really icky. I don't know if we've got to recommend this to full council or not if we make the decision, but I am really uncomfortable that £500,000 expenditure, no input, there's no understanding, there's several options, we read the opinion of those options, but we haven't really got the time or resources to explore them. I am uncomfortable with just being, this is effectively being dumped on us with a 10,000 bullet to say yes.
Okay, what I would ask members to do is forget £10,000. We went through a process. We have options. We discussed informally with the administration, the informal administration group, as was then, about having a system that, unless we went into the cloud, would be unsupported, which was the reason that we needed to change. The discussions were also had at the finance sub meetings, which I accept were at the time the administration, so the Conservatives and the Liberal Democrats at the time weren't involved in these. We have a situation where we have options, and the options are that we stay with our existing supplier and we go through the upgrade to move it to the cloud, which will cost us more money, which does bring in risks. As a result of that, and following those discussions, we've been out to the market to find a new supplier that can do what we want safely and hopefully for better value. We've been through the process. This is the meeting where members discuss, and when you say that members haven't had time to go through the options, that is what this meeting is for members to ask questions about the options, to enable them to make the decision. And I understand for some of the Conservatives and the Liberal Democrats that might be more challenging because of the issues that you haven't been in the finance sub and you haven't been in the informal administration group. I understand that. But fundamentally, the information you need with the recommendations, so the officers have done their job and given you their view. Fundamentally, it's up to members. The bit where they say, do you want to get it over the line by the end of the month and you get 10 grand for a charity, is not ever a reason that officers would ever recommend a supplier. This is a supplier. We've done the due diligence, we've done the process. They have come out as the best value. We've also, as an additional, spoken to councils that are using this supplier, and we've also had our IT experts, in brackets, geeks, that have really had those in-depth, if you think this is boring, the in-depth discussion about how it all works, so we are confident that we will have a finance system that works. It is now up to members to use that information that you've read in that report to decide, if you've got questions, to ask the officers the questions, but to decide whether, forgetting £10,000, whether you think this is the right thing to go for. If you do, what we're saying is we've brought it to you 3 months earlier than we would have done because we are being incentivised to sign a contract, which I understand can make you, I completely understand why it makes one feel icky. I think which is a technical term, but what I'm saying is we would have been here in 3 months with the same report, because this is, the officer's view is this is the correct and proper way to move forward. It is expensive. Finance systems are expensive. But if we don't have one that is safe and secure, the residents of this borough will suffer, because people won't get paid, local businesses won't get paid, people will pay into their council tax and it won't get apportioned to the right place. Parishes won't get their money because it all comes through a very complex finance system. Hope that answers your question.
Councillor Baldock.
Okay, so on the basis that this is about computers and stuff and finance, two of which are issues I am not an expert on. Very close to my heart, yeah. 2.11, option 2. This would see us continuing with our system, but moving from our own physical servers into cloud servers owned by Swale and Mid-Kent. Does that mean that other councils are using it, or is it just that we would be piggybacking on something that happens to be there?
So part of the ICT delivery plan is that they will be moving things into a Mid-Kent cloud situation, so servers that will be used by Swale, Maidstone and Tunbridge Wells. They remain kind of within our remit, but as the report says, actually on that situation, the system would actually be unsupported by the supplier.
But it's good enough for other councils.
Other councils have moved to arrangements where they are on the supplier's cloud, which is what we're recommending through moving to Company D. Maidstone currently use a different system that is cloud hosted. It's on that supplier's cloud. It is not on the situation that's described in 2.11.
Thank you. Councillor Worcester.
Thank you, Chair. After due consideration, I will be supporting the decision to have an active working financial system for the council. This has to be done, however unpalatable it is, and I definitely support officers in their way through. From the £10,000 decision, I would rather see companies come forward rather than go, oh, here's £10,000 attached to a contract. What we should be saying is we've decided to pick up and we prefer this company because they've got a history of social giving and social value in our area. So I think maybe this is what this company is trying to do. But from my personal perspective, I think the report stands alone well on its own in its decision to be made. And I think hopefully the company will take that on board and be giving to the community anyway, rather than, for instance, make it a perk of a contract. Because if they've got this £10,000 that they can just give away, there are many, many good causes that could do with that. And that is totally separate to the fact that we still need a working financial situation at this council. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Richard Palmer, please.
Yeah, as soon as I heard of the offer of the £10,000, it raised concerns, and I accept what Claire was saying, and I would say that they've looked at it in quite a diligent way, and I think the questions that were answered by Larissa and Claire. My concern is, in a public domain, we're making a decision based on £10,000. That's what the public will hear, and that's what the public will see.
Mr. Chairman, my apologies, but
What part of the Constitution you're bringing it up? Right. It is on. Right. Thank you. So my concern is, and I think I can go with Company D, and I can see the benefits of what you're saying, but I do feel going forward we shouldn't be using things like that in a public forum or even in a private forum. We shouldn't be saying to members the decision that you make tonight is dependent that they could get £10,000 out of it. It does not read well with the public, and it is an uncomfortable thing. However, I think with trust in the officers and Claire and how it's been put across, I do tend to agree that Company D is probably the most appropriate company to go for. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wise.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I am in support of the two recommendations, very happy to, based on what I read in the paperwork. So anything further to that has had no bearing on that for members. You know, this is what that was not in this paperwork that was circulated. And I think it's just, I've got two real points on it. I suppose the local government reorganisation timescale is an important consideration. So I thank the officers for drawing that out as an explanation for why recommendation 1 is the way it is. I think that's really important that we understand that. And I think, as other members have said, you know, going through this change to a financial management system is probably something that you don't particularly relish at any time, but obviously bearing in mind the local government reorganisation and the fact that that is an additional consideration when putting this forward, I accept therefore the need for recommendation 1 the way it is. And I think it's a very palatable decision for me, actually, because the implications for us not acting and doing this, and as Councillor Palmer said, entrusting that officers are putting forward the most robust and sensible option for us, it would be really concerning if this committee was to make a decision that wasn't in support of these two recommendations, because there will be very significant consequences to the council not having a properly functioning and secure system like this. So very happy to support the recommendations. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Hunt, please.
Thanks. I just wanted to clarify, because it does seem a lot of money, but at 3.3, from what I'm reading there, the annual cost of the option is lower than the remaining with the current provider. So there'll actually be a saving by doing this from what we're... Can you just clarify that part of it for me then, please?
Going with the recommended option would be cheaper than staying with the incumbent supplier, but it's not a saving on the current budget. It's a reduced amount of growth that would be needed.
Thank you. Councillor Chris Palmer, please.
Thank you. Mine's more of a question, really. I'm looking at the table at 2.43 and I'm struggling to... Are all the options, apart from D, all with the incumbent one? Because there's more than two options on there.
Yeah, we have included, obviously, the cost for the incumbent and also for Company D. Further in the report, it talks about the other suppliers that we could go out to potentially replace the system, but there are reasons explained in the report why we don't feel those are suitable, so we've not included any costs within that table.
Oh, right. I said that was the costs I was looking for, but I'm happy to trust the officers and their recommendations as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jays, please.
Thank you, Chair. It'd be nice if that £10,000 could be divided into 4 pots, but we've been told to forget the £10,000, so I'll forget that. Claire, you seem very content with this option. As long as they're not connected to the post office in any way, IT system, then I'm more than happy to go with this.
Thank you. Councillor Baldock, please.
Okay, 2.42. Due to the resource required for both projects, is this a new project? I mean, I really don't understand this. So this is an extra resource, but we will need to, requiring us to backfill the systems accountant post throughout the project. So in order to free up the current officer to focus on this project, this can be funded from reserves. Always interesting that that crops up. From the digital transformation budget. So why are we needing to do this? Why are we needing this extra person?
To either change the system or simply to upgrade and move our existing system to the cloud is a huge project. My team is a very small team that are already fully stretched. So to take on this project at the same time wouldn't be deliverable within the resources. So that's why I'm requesting backfilling that post for up to a year just to carry out this project.
Okay, members, I'll take this one to the vote then. Those in favour of both recommendation 1 and 2, I'll take them together. Those against? And abstentions? Thank you. So, that's agreed, members. Thank you very much indeed. We now move on to item 9, which is changes to the committee structure.
Thank you, Chair. So this report outlines proposed changes to the committee structure. The committee structure was formed by a working group and agreed by full council, and we moved to from the cabinet system to committee system in 2022. In 2023, the peer review, which we discussed earlier on this evening, commented that we had rather a lot of committees and rather a lot of meetings, and suggested that we should consider reviewing that. A review was undertaken last year, and the agreement was to keep the same number of committees but reduce the frequency. During Budget Council this year, there was discussion about reducing the number of committees. However, it was agreed by members that Budget Council wasn't the place to do it, and so a report was taken to the Constitutional Working Group in order to discuss the possibilities of reducing both the numbers of the numbers of committees, and also the make changes to the area committees. The report that went to the Constitutional Working Group suggested moving from Policy and Resources and 4 committees to Policy Resources and 3, but at the meeting the members made a counter request to the chair that it reduced further than that. That is the recommendation that's here. In addition, it was suggested at that committee that we reduce the frequency of area committee meetings from 4 to 3, losing the December committee, and that's due to the poor attendance of that committee, and also to remove the special responsibility allowance for the chairs of area committees from the municipal year 25-26. What members also wanted the Chief Executive, me, to do was undertake a full review of the effectiveness of area committees, actually working with area committees, parish councils and the public to report back to Policy and Resources Committee in the municipal year 25-26. But there has been a request that happens to the beginning of that municipal year rather than waiting till the end of that municipal year. So these are the recommendations that are set out, numbers 1 to 5. Any changes from the this committee would recommend to full council these changes, and they would all take place from the beginning of the municipal year, which would start in May. Happy to take any questions, Chair. Recommendation to full council.
Thank you. Councillor Harrison, please.
Thank you, Chair. My views, I hope, are very well known, although I'm toying with one and several subcommittees, but I think I'd be chucked out of the Labour group. Some of my colleagues have said, well, we understand where you're coming from, but we think that we should be moving gradually towards it. I can always understand other people's views. I don't necessarily agree with it. So, because I was outnumbered, I think I would be prepared to amend the recommendation to say that we move first from 1 plus 3.
1 plus
1 plus 3 to 1 plus 2. 1, 2.
Sorry, for clarity, I think what Councillor Harrison is saying is rather than having Policy and Resources and 2 committees, we have Policy, Resources and 3 committees, reducing it therefore by 1 committee. Is that accurate?
I might have to go out. Yeah, I think.
Sorry to help, if that helps.
Yes,
there is
currently Policy and Resources plus 4. My amendment is that it goes to Policy and Resources plus 3, and then the following year Policy and Resources plus 2. If we're here any longer, then I'll probably be moving to my ideal of Policy and Resources plus a couple of subcommittees, but I'm not moving that as an amendment at this moment
If it
in
helps,
time.
Chair, that would be alternative options 3.1, to take a 2-stage approach to reduce the service committees from Policy and Resources and 4 committees to Policy and Resources as 2 by reducing the service committees by 1 in the municipal year and by a further reduction in 26-27.
Good. And the other point is on the area committees, which I would I'd like the Chief Exec to flesh out her last comment, because my reading this and then hearing what you've just said, because my view is, number one, I don't think that when these were set up, enough thought was given into how they would operate. I have seen them operate in various guises over the years, some been fantastic, some not. But what I wouldn't be prepared to do is waste a whole year chewing the cud. Whatever review of area committees is done, I would want it to take effect from the new civic year, because we all know, even though I don't know about Hannah and Lloyd, indeed yourself, Chair, I haven't seen one draft of the calendar of meetings for the next civic year, let alone the 15 that we usually have before we agree it. So, but normally, everything all of a sudden, you get all the meetings starting in June, September, December, and March. So you'd be having a June area committee without actually having it, having the proper review. So anything that happens, I would want to take effect from that June meeting. And I think it's very important that not only current area chairs, but also anyone who is interested in being, actively involved in an area committee, gives their two penneth. There are instances where they have worked really, really well, and I can tell you the results. I can show you the results in Sheerness from when Steve Worrell was chair, as I'm sure other areas can too. This latest round of the way the area committees were set up was not as effective as it could be, because number one, it started off with money and then the money disappeared. So the people disappeared. But we'll carry on having them because, people might want to come along. The only thing I would say is that I would support 3. That doesn't preclude a review, but I think the December meeting, with everything else that is going on, not just for us, being a councillor is part of your role in life. People work, people have families, as do our staff. And I think for what we've had so far is that officers have been running around trying to find agenda items for area committees because, people haven't been taking the role very seriously. I would still support that it be 3 a year, but a proper 3 a year where there are really meaty issues that are of concern to the community. And if there is nothing of a real meaty issue coming up in 3 months, then whoever is the chair should be saying, right, we've got nothing coming up that's suitable for, I'll call it October meeting. So I would like 3 months ahead to say, knock it on the head. But if there is a big emergency issue that comes up on the Isle of Sheppey, I would want to be able to call an emergency meeting of the area committee as one of my 3. So I think that sort of thing should be looked at in this review. Let's say I would like it. So that's two areas that I've made proposals. Thanks.
So, through you, Chair, in order for, if you wanted to have the review finished by annual council, that's fine, but annual council can't make a decision on what to do without a recommendation from P&R. And this is the last P&R before annual council. So what members can do is members can agree to the reduction and the review, and I will seek advice from the monitoring officer. Once the meetings are published at annual council, if the review is overwhelming that there should be a change, either in nature, number or existence, whether full council can then take policy and resources and full council can then take a decision to cancel the ones that haven't happened yet, if that makes sense.
presuming that sufficient time has elapsed between the original decision and that then there's a new report and a P&R recommendation, then council isn't then bound to follow through with what annual council decided previously. So I'll just say yes.
They can.
The full council, in receipt of a recommendation from a properly formed committee, can make a new decision.
So I think for Councillor Harrison, I think we can start the review now. We can try and finish the review. We want any review to be meaningful. So we would want to talk to parish councils. We would need to understand. So just as an anecdote, the parish council that I am currently still appointed to, has said the other day that they don't find benefit in the area committees, although they do find benefit in the local council's liaison forum, which is something I know has been raised by other town and parishes. But where you've got areas that don't have parish and town councils, what's the offer for them? So I do think there is a piece of work that we must do around the areas that are not parished to understand what they would benefit from as well. So whilst we can commit to doing the work in the most expedient way possible, it would need to be a piece of work that is thorough and truly understands the views of both parished and unparished areas.
Blimey, Charles, I've got to get shot. Right, so Councillor Harrison, are you well? So I think perhaps we'll have a quick 10-minute break, if we may. Thank you. Right, are we okay to resume? If any better, Councillor Harrison? Good. Councillor Perkin then, please.
Thank you. So I've spoken on the effectiveness of the Eastern Area Committee previously. It's not super productive. It's badly attended. I tend to agree with the Chief Executive's previous points about the usefulness of other organisations to be able to do similar things. The concern that I have about going to reducing committees by stages is that actually that's quite complicated, because when we've spoken in the Constitutional Working Group about the reduction in number of committees, there's some discussion about like parts of a function of a committee going in with this other committee and kind of splitting the functions of the existing committees into different areas. And I think actually doing that in stages makes that really complicated to achieve. I think I'm in the camp that if we're going to do it, we should probably just do it and then know what the functions of each committee are before the next civic year. I think actually prolonging that process becomes quite drawn out and potentially complicated. I wondered what the officer view is on capacity to be able to separate them without a year in between doing that, and whether they think it's feasible to just kind of make a clean cut by the annual council.
If this were to go ahead, the recommendation that the officers will have will be that some of the committees stay the same, that health and housing and community and leisure are amalgamated, so we don't separate functions in the first year, and then in the second year we move to the option that was set out in this paper. So there wouldn't be a wholesale change. What there would be is an amalgamation in the first stage. That wouldn't entirely solve some of the issues that have been raised around overlapping, but it would significantly reduce the overlapping, because the majority of the overlap is between communities and leisure and health and housing. So it is achievable without much work, because it is fundamentally an amalgamation. The second piece of work, in effect, doesn't require an awful lot of work anyway, because as you'll see in the appendix, we've done that piece of work to work out what it would look like. So it's very achievable to do either option 3.1. You'll see not option 3.1, the option set out in 3.1. You'll see that the officer recommendation, the reason that the officers refused it was twofold. Firstly was because it wasn't what the will of the Constitutional Working Group, which is a large thing. Secondly, the concern would be whether it would people would think, oh well, it's not worth doing stuff because it's going to change again. But if members don't feel like that, then absolutely, then that's the only thing that I can think of that would be a negative. And bearing in mind the original report to Constitutional Working Group suggested option 3.1, it would be churlish of me now to say, actually, I think that's a terrible idea.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Wise.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to second my colleague's proposed amendment that it is option 1 in 3.1 instead of recommendation 1. Part of my reason for that is I do agree with the movement towards a much simplified committee structure. It's just purely on timescales with annual council literally round the corner, and I just think it's totally legitimate and fair for CWG to put forward a proposal, but that is just one small cohort of the membership, and I think it's quite a large change, and I think moving to something where in effect there's an amalgamation of two committees does sound quite straightforward. It's easy for members and officers to digest that change. I appreciate that officers have pulled together a list, but that is what it is at this stage, a list. There is quite a lot that would have to be involved in making sure that is all aligned, ready for whenever. And that is part of the issue for me, really, is if I knew when the sort of meetings were schedule is proposed in draft outline for the next civic year, perhaps I would be a bit more at ease about it just going ahead. It's not out of any reason for me, from me thinking that there's a profound reason why we shouldn't have policy and resources and two service committees. I just think it would be potentially a little safer that there is more consideration given into how those services are split, and we don't avoid either delaying any reports that might come to those committees through uncertainties, or in effect duplicating again, because actually the split and division of these hasn't had enough time to be fully considered. So that's why I would second the proposal that...
Sorry, point of order, Chairman. I thought the amendment that Councillor Harrison suggested was to move to P&R and 3 service committees. Yeah. That would be option 2, not option 1. Because I was going to second it as option 2.
No, option 1 at 3.1 is to take a 2-stage approach.
Yeah, but I think what was actually said was prepared to move from 5 committees to 4.
But Councillor Harrison's proposal was that there is still, the journey is still towards 3. It's just that it's 4 policy and resources plus 3 committees in 26-27, and then from 27 it's policy and resources and 2 committees. That was my understanding.
Councillor Harrison, could you clarify that for us?
Not really. I think I said that the aim would be to then go PNR and 3, and then to go, the aim would be to go for PNR and 2.
So in total 3 committees?
Ultimately.
Yeah, ultimately, yeah.
So, sorry, Chair, I think that's just, now that's been clarified, that I'm happy to second Councillor Harrison's proposal then, that the amendment was that we don't proceed with recommendations 1 and 2. We go for option 1 at 3.1. Happy to second that. I did have some further comments around the bit about area committees, but I don't know if that's helpful for me to say this now.
We'll take this one first.
Okay.
Councillor Baldock, please.
Yeah, thank you. I think the fact we're even discussing this indicates just how stagnant this council has become. The fact that we haven't got much work for some of these committees apparently shows that we're not actually doing anything as a council. You know, we should have a full agenda of things, but we don't know what's happening in 3, 6, 12 months. We have, at every meeting, the forward plan, people suggest things to be put on. We don't have a precise vision or delivery journey for this council. It's just going from meeting to meeting. I think that's why I can understand why you want to reduce committees, because there's just it's just inertia. There's nothing happening. I don't think that's what we should be doing for the last 3 or 4 years of this council. I think there is work which should be done. We need to be looking at getting that work done, but we need to be knowing as a council where we're going. And at the moment we don't. Well, he knows where he's going, I hope. So I'm very concerned at the way this is, we're going about this. A proposal came to CWG, an amendment was made at CWG, the person who made the amendment has stepped back from it. This is not how you really organise how a council is run. If we want to go down this route, then, there's some ideas, but who's fed into those ideas? Who's sat down and said, could this bit be taken out of that? Now, I'm not opposed to going to P&R and free service committees, but I think first we need to discuss what they should be. I think we need to have input from more than just CWG and P&R. So I'm reluctant to support this amendment because I don't see a journey that would take us from 5 to 4 to 3 as being positive. I think we need to have those discussions. We need to see how this council is going to work for the next 3 years, because as it looks at the moment, the 27 elections might be cancelled. We'll roll on to 28. That's still a lot of time, but we've got to get direction. We need all our members involved in that process, not just a handful here, a handful there. So I would be happy to move to 4 committees after discussion, after all groups and people have sat down and actually worked out what we want to do as a council going forward and how we can best deliver that. And I don't think just cutting committee numbers down because we haven't got an idea of what we're doing is the way to go about it. So I wouldn't support this amendment. If it falls, I would be happy to propose option 2, but this one, I think, but again, option 2 with discussion. Is it health and housing and communities, or do we actually want to see the responsibilities lined up in a different way? And as Councillor Perkins said, what we do now, if we're going to do it in 2 stages, there are possible ways of doing it, but is that the best way? We need to make those discussions, I think, as members and work together to see how we want to see this council go forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hunt, please.
Thanks. I think the stepped approach is better if we're going to be doing that, because that does give us as well some way to see how it goes as well with changes. But there's parts in here, there's a small mention about budgets, and obviously it came up at the budget meeting as looking at a way to reduce costs as well. This has obviously come out of the peer review challenge about reducing things down, and now there's also the budget thing in there as well, and I think we just need to be clear on why we're doing this. Is it to be saving money? Is it because we've got too much going on? But if that comes back to the point that we have less committees but more members sitting on them, and for the chairs of those committees are also going to have more work to be doing as well. So will it actually come to a stage where we have that independent body that comes in and looks at the allowances and things and then starts recommending that actually the allowances need to go up because people are doing more work on those committees, especially the chairs? So actually the savings that we're starting to look at, we don't actually know about because that could be going up. So there is some questions I think that do need to be answered and actually know how that's going to be working. But on the other side, I think I do agree initially of reducing the committees down and then that work being done to make sure that actually what are the implications.
Thank you. Councillor Wood.
I just wanted to check that we're going to be voting on these recommendations individually, are we? We're not going to take them all as like agreeing 1 to 5.
Yeah, I shall break them down.
Thank you. That's reassuring. From my point of view, and it's not as detailed as everybody else's, but if this means that we change and we have more money to keep providing services for residents, as opposed to, for instance, having committees, and I've been on some of the committees, where we possibly meet for half an hour and then go home. I absolutely think there is some definite efficiencies that could be made. So in principle, I am absolutely supportive of it, but I'm also very supportive of having the scrutiny attached to it to make sure that any sort of efficiencies or savings are really tangible for residents to see, so that they can see why these decisions are being made on their behalf, as opposed to people thinking, goodness me, we haven't got enough time in our calendar. That may be difficult to squeeze meetings in, but tough luck. And very similar for when we talk about agendas for these things. From my point of view, this council has got a huge amount of work to do. So sometimes I find it very dismaying to sit on committees where we've got one thing on the agenda and not a lot on the future decision-making plans. So if amalgamating of councils committees can help that, and we can provide that scrutiny, which I'm sure my Liberal Democrat friend would be absolutely supportive of, I'm all in favour of that. But as long as we can be absolutely clear that those savings are going to benefit residents at every cost. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. I'm getting mixed messages, despite the fact it's been cleared up that it's option 1. Surely option 2 would be better, with the caveat that we review this in a year's time. You know, if 3 committees plus P&R works, then we stick to that. I think we're limiting ourselves by saying we're going to do this, but in a year's time we're definitely going to reduce it. Those committees could be perfect. You know, they could be delivering the best work. So I don't think I can support option 1. We're also halfway through our terms in just over a month. You know, members should be getting into their strides, the committees should be getting into their strides, and we're just going to pull the rug out. It's odd. There is obviously different ways we could line up the 3 committees. We could take option 2 and move health and housing into community and leisure, or we could line it up with our heads of services. But again, that's not part of the proposal, and so it's really unclear. We need to know where we're going. Are we going to incorporate option 2 and incorporate health and housing into leisure, or are we going to take a different option? We could go through line by line on each committee's responsibility and work out what 3. I hope not, because it would increase the figures that we can use for next time and review committees. But if we're saying that some of these committees are so obsolete because of the apologies received or lack of attendance or time taken, then perhaps we're picking on the wrong committees. Planning has the most amount of apologies, so perhaps we should cancel planning. Council has the second most, so perhaps we should cancel that. Audit only meets for 39 minutes on average, so I know statutory we need an audit committee, but are we picking on the right things?
Thank you. Councillor Wise.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think actually Councillor Jay's last point is about what is the consideration for why the committee changes are being looked at is important, because it shouldn't be about whether there's apologies given and those sorts of things, because there could be all sorts of reasons for that. So I think the real issue which makes it really easy to consider the proposal that I'm making is there's duplication. And duplication is not stagnation. It's provides the opportunity then for streamlining the decision making, clarifying the decision making, and I think that's particularly important not only in light of the peer review report, but also especially with local government reorganisation going on. I don't want officers to be duplicating their time at committees, preparing for committees. There's a lot ahead of us. And so actually I think it was very valid just for CWG to bring forward proposals to this committee. And, you know, this is our opportunity to have our say, and these recommendations, if we agree them today, will go to full council for their consideration. But I do think that having, you know, been a member for a couple of years coming up now, there is the opportunity to reorganise things now. And I think the two-step approach, the reason I'm advocating for it is because I do see the merit in going to P&R and 2 service committees. It's just the timing of which we're bringing this forward. I'd have probably had a different view if this had been brought forward, 6 or 7 months ago. So I just think bringing this forward with the amendment that I'm putting forward would be, I still feel minded that is the best way to move ahead on this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Richard Palmer.
I do have some concerns. I can understand why they're trying to do it, but I don't feel option 1 is the best way to go. I would probably favour option 2. I've heard what has been said, and I think sometimes we've missed an opportunity as well to look at some of the other committees. Someone mentioned audit. Well, you could have an audit and compliance where audit standards, because I think if you look at the number of standards meetings that have been cancelled, you could have audit and compliance, which covers audit committee, and it rolls in with licensing and so you could reduce the number of committees there. Are you doing it to save money? Are you doing it to make it more efficient? And I personally feel probably option 2, if you are going to change, is probably the best route to go. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There could be a small monetary saving. From my point of view, you can always find money. The one thing that we give in this room that we can never get back is time. That is what we give to our residents. You can't buy time back. Once it's gone, it's gone. And the amount of time that we are spending getting over here, sitting here for however long and then getting back. Oh, why don't we set up a working group? Well, actually, we might fit it in 6 months' time because there's no space in the diary. There are a lot of task and finish working groups, Mr. Chairman, which are not so much finishing, but they're still tasking. And I would think going forward that with this devolution malarkey, that there will be others. Some of you in this room will be councillors in whatever unitary authority happens. I won't be, I'm saying that now. I'm going to retire. And there are some things that I would hope that we would be looking at in that final couple of years in terms of synergies with what we are doing and what other people are doing. As I mentioned earlier in relation to something Steph said, the democracy and school children. There is work going on with NEETs at County Hall, Kent County Council. There is work going on with the DWP, It impacts our young people in our boroughs and districts. Well, forget them, our borough. We should be having a seat at the table of some of these things that are happening. Where we've got the time, we haven't got any time. I think we need to clear some space. Quite apart from, do you want an input into devolution? I know the leaders are on it. What about the rest of us? Well, there's no space in the diary, Councillor Harrison. I'm not saying I've asked, by the way, I'm just presuming, because that's what's been happening when we want anything extra, because we are packing that calendar from Monday through to Thursday night, and something needs to give. In terms of that panel, that member remuneration panel, Councillor Hunt, we can do the same as we have done the last couple of times, which is say, thank you very much for your report, love, and we're not going to take any notice of it, we're going to ignore it, we're not going to agree it. And that was what happened the last time. So whatever they recommend doesn't mean to say this council has to do. In terms of audit, Councillor Palmer, I was here when we were asked to set it up, as were other councils around the country. It's not a choice. And ditto the Standards Committee. I cannot recall whether it was a laid down instrument or if it was legislation, but it was certainly, I can say dictated, that's the wrong word, told to us that you had to have this and you had to have that. So that's not a question of amalgamation. But, you know, I think we should be looking at these things. But if you recall, members, when we had a questionnaire, was it beginning of last year or before the end of the last term? And I wrote back and said, yeah, actually, I think we need to look at how many committees we've got, not how many meetings we've got during the year. And a number of people did actually reply and say, yeah, I agree with Councillor Harrison. But it was, no, we're not looking at that. We're only looking at cutting the meetings from 6 meetings a year to 4. Well, you know, when will we look at these things if we don't make a stand? I think, and that's why I've proposed it, that we should be moving, we should be cutting down on our committees. We should go, but in a staged approach. Now, as you go through this staged approach, members could come up with other ideas. Well, what about doing this? And what about doing, you know, doing that? Well, all grist to the mill. But we need to free up some space, Mr. Chairman, so that all members can be involved in what's coming next.
Thank you. Councillor Lehman.
Thank you, Chair. I was surprised. I looked at the options, the alternative options considered and rejected, and I was very disappointed that options 2, 3 and 4 all had some very circular reasoning contained within them. Option 2, when this was discussed at Constitutional Working Group, it was not the decision of the working group to recommend this, is not a reason why it was rejected. That's just what happened. Option 3, this is not recommended due to the fact that the Constitution Working Group did not support this as an option, and same in option 4. Option 1 is the only one that has what I thought was like quite a cogent reason not to do it, and I'm surprised that this is the one that's now being pushed for by some members. I agree with Councillor Baldock. I think option 2 is the right way to go. In terms of synergies that Councillor Harrison's just been talking about, perhaps, you know, we should be looking at what our neighbouring authorities and Kent and anyone else that we might be amalgamated with in 3 or 4 years' time, the way they're working, and work towards that. But if we go with option 2 rather than option 1 at the current time, then that gives us the time and space to do that piece of work, whilst also making a decisive decision now to go down from 4 committees plus PNR to 3. And if it's within our constitution, I didn't get time before you called me, I would like to propose that we move to the vote on the proposed amendment, if that's allowed. Thank you.
Councillor Baldock.
Thank you. Right, Councillor Hunt referred to increasing membership of the committees, if I understood him correctly. I don't think that's on the table. I think it's just at 15 at the moment, might be reduced, but I don't think there's any proposal to increase membership of committees. If he'd like to propose it, I would support him, because I think the more we involve members, the better. It's suggested that this would increase member input, but I think on the contrary, it reduces member input. You've got less opportunity for members to actually input into the policies that are coming forward. So we're actually, you know, less committees that people are on, you're probably reducing overall membership input. The money aspect is, I think, well, compared to what we've just agreed for the backfill, negligible, because it doesn't really, there won't be a huge saving from it. And I don't think that's the reason you should work out how best to deliver services on a council. The best way to have democratic accountability. So the other problem you get is you've got less people that can do working groups. You've got each committee will have more work, but a smaller pool that you can get people to do on the working groups, because they're supposed to come from the parent committee. So smaller groups are going to have more trouble getting people on the working groups. I know they already have trouble. But this is going to be, you know, this isn't going to ease the situation. So I really think we need to be taking a more fundamental look at this. And that's why option 1, by setting in place a 2-year programme with its own the only recommendation is that this is not recommended. It takes time for the service committee to work well. There could be issues with the committee not achieving its potential during the change is temporary. I think you're looking at, effectively fudging a year, a waste of potential. So I think option one, it's too much too soon. There needs to be far wider discussion about where we want to go, how it's going to be managed, what the membership numbers are. So no, I think option one is just not a sensible option at this time.
Councillor Richard Palmer.
And
No, I think
Councillor
most of
Lehman
the
wasn't out of order with a motion if he was seconded.
Most of the points have been raised, apart from working groups. It depends on the structure of the working group. Some will be cross-party or cross committee. The leisure working group is an example. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Perkin.
I think I'm still probably in the camp that believes we should just crack on with it. I think actually, if we were just to take the recommendation one, we could be more radical in our approach to be able to facilitate things for the residents, in that we make a decision, we have our committees, the committees know that they're starting in the next municipal year, and they can be as ambitious as they want to from that point onwards. I don't think it leads to a deficit in representation if that chair of that committee is going to really drive that committee to achieve things. I think actually by delaying it for a year, might put a bit of a dampener on the ability to be ambitious and to be radical in your thinking and to be kind of, responsive to what the residents are saying are important, because I think I know that officers have said that they don't think there is a worry about it being kind of seen as temporary. But I think actually, if you start off as you mean to go on, have your two committees and just make them effective. Have your work programme in advance, be able to discuss what's coming next, then you have the opportunity to really kind of make a programme of work that is ambitious and outward looking. So I think actually let's just do it and do it well.
Thank you. Right, members, I don't see anybody else indicating, so we'll take the amendment to the vote. And the amendment is for option 1 to replace recommendation 1. Option 1 of 3.1, yeah. Yes, please.
To recommend to full council to take a two-stage approach to reduce the service committees from Policy and Resources Committee and 4 services committees to Policy and Resources and Committee, and 2 service committees by reducing the service committees by 1 in the municipal year 25-26 and a further 1 in the municipal year 26-27. That's it. No, that's not the amendment.
Thank you. So, members, those in favour? Those against? Abstentions? No? Okay. Okay, so that comes down to Chairman's casting vote, and I'm going with the recommendation for option 1.
No, the amended.
The amended recommendation, sorry, which is option 1. Thank you. So now we move on to in fact, I need to do that substantively first as well, don't I? Because that was the amendment. So I'll
On that one, the amendment, you haven't got to vote again. Because
it does resume to the.
Sorry, you replaced all the recommendations with that one recommendation.
no,
No.
but he's doing the recommendations individually.
Yeah.
So he doesn't need to do number 1 again.
No, because that's now been amended.
Yeah, so that's what he was saying.
Okay,
So
right.
that's
I've got you.
amended.
Right, yeah.
It would be if you were taking the whole lot again. It would be that with the amendment.
Okay, so we come on to recommendation 3, which is to reduce the frequency of area committee meetings from 4 per annum to 3 per annum, losing the December committee from municipal year 25-26. Sorry, Councillor Worcester.
Thank you. So I'll just put it on the table. I'm in favour of area committees. From Sheppy's point of view, they're essential, actually. I take Larissa's point about it especially being important for Halfway, because that is an unparished area, so I completely agree. It gives them a voice, actually. But more importantly, it's an attended committee, and you can see by the figures that you've actually provided that it's an attended committee, and it's been some really important stuff that has been on that committee. Now, when we look at items 3, 4 and 5, I'm all in favour of having a review, because I think absolutely terms of reference and having a place, and that's all efficiency. I like that. I'm in favour of that. What I find a bit odd about those recommendations, though, is that we are not really provided with the data that I was expecting to see to look at decisions along those lines. And also, when we're looking at the data, for example, it's a bit skewed, isn't it? So when you look at the breakdown, how many of those committees, of all of those committees, got the same amount of councillors that attend? I don't think they have. So when you're looking at absentee or apologies and things for a committee that has got less numbers, that's obviously going to skew the data a little bit, if you see what I mean. I would absolutely support a review, but I think to have the chief executive undertake a full review separate to the review that apparently the other committee has looked at, I think this doesn't read right for me. I would like to see a full review of the area committees with a full tranche of data come forward to support decision making on that basis, including cost breakdown. So, for example, if we do decide to move the committees from 4 to 3, I would like to see how much money that we're thinking of saving, what is the projected officer time that we're saving, and that to me would be a real point to make these decisions on. At the moment, I don't see, especially for remove the responsibility allowance of the chair. I think that to me is something that needs to be supported with data. So would like to support, but I think this is worded wrong. I think we could have come back with better recommendations to support a review for area committees, and I would like to see that the working group or the group that have spoken about this has discussed more than the data that has been put in front of us this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Baldock, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I agree with virtually everything Councillor Worcester has just said, which means this will be a little bit shorter. This just comes forward as a proposal to CWG. We discuss it, and then it goes to P&R, a small number of council, and then it gets recommended to full council. I'm concerned that we are being put in a position on the CWG, which is really about the Constitution, but we are, that things can come forward like this without consideration, or as Councillor Worcester said, reports, debates. I accept that some area committees might be more active than others, but we've got to look at what the area committees are supposed to be doing. They're not used by this council as much as they should be. We're supposed to have things up front so that the area committees can discuss what the potential impact of future policies are. you cut those down, you cut the numbers of area committees down. Already we're getting, I've suggested in the past, that should go to this area committee, or we should, let's get the area committee's consideration on that. And it's like, oh no, but it's got to be done by this date. There's not an area committee before then, so the area committees don't get used, and that's why people are not able to feed into the policy. We're not, one of the purposes of the area committees was that stuff that was coming forward, they would have early sight of and can put into an early stage, that wouldn't be good for Faversham because of this. Or if you're going to do that, it would be better done on this day. Or, giving that early bird input to policies that this council comes forward with. That's not happening. So that's why many area committees aren't able to play such a full role. If we had that early input, if we allowed policies to go out early doors for discussion by the whole council, then those area committees would have a real role. They'd be saying, this policy needs changing, that policy needs amending. It's down to this council to get its act in order so that stuff can go to the area committees, that input can be had. And maybe they're in the same cycle as the service committees. So you're always crunching them up against the service committees. If they were like 2 months earlier, then you might be able to have stuff in time for the following service committee. So I'm in favour of a review because I think they are underused and could have a much better benefit. There was always a problem between people thinking, were they an engagement forum or a policy discussion forum? The money was supposed to be for policy to make that, we see this policy coming forward, we would like this bit extra put in SHEPI. It ended up being a come and bid for it process, which it was never meant to be. In Western, we did use the money to deliver extras to the council programme, so we got extra conservation assessments and things. That was how they worked. The fact that the money's gone doesn't help, but it's still that policy input. So cutting them down from 4 to 3 just means that you're just building in the failure of the area committees. You're just taking away the opportunity to be using them as they should be used, which is helping develop good policy. So I don't agree with option 3, but I do agree with option 5, and I'm open-minded about option 4. I've heard what Councillor Worcester has said, and I would like to hear what other people say about number 4, because I'm on the fence on that. But I would, I'd oppose 3, fence 4, and agree 5.
Councillor Joes.
Thank you, Chair. I fundamentally disagree with this recommendations. We set up the area committees to give all members greater say, and with the public had greater say involvement. Some area committees may wrap up in under an hour, but SHEPI area committee isn't so lucky, and you're lucky if you don't extend standing orders, as has happened on a number of occasions. I don't think this is the right time for the SHEPI area committees to be cut, given the SHEPI Revival Levelling Up scheme. I know councillors' attendance on the report, but it doesn't mention public attendance or parish and town council attendance. As is shown on the data, SHEPI area committees are the 4th longest meetings on average, and I think they're probably up there as 1st, 2nd or 4th for best meetings. 20k is a small price to pay for increase in democracy and scrutiny. I suppose that's more for the other thing, the scrutiny. I'm not sure why their committees chairs are being targeted when it's shown that standards, audits and licensing spend less minutes in meetings. It doesn't sound like this is being carried out for financial reasons. Perhaps a cut in area committees SRA in line with cutting from 4 committees to 3 would be a better idea. I think these chair positions are an opportunity to upskill councillors in their chairing skills, they can start in area committees and perhaps progress on to service committees in the future, or even sit where you are, Chair. And I know some people have to take unpaid leave from work to make sure they can attend area committees or even committees in general. I don't think this is trying to solve a problem. It doesn't exist. I don't know why we're trying to cut this. And so because some councillors don't want to attend in winter, we're going to cut public engagement. As said, the area committees at Sheppey are so well attended. We get more public attend area committees than we ever see in the public gallery here. Chairs can just call a full extraordinary meeting if need be, so I don't really... And as we saw last year, area committee chairs were able to cancel an area committee meeting. This was done because of the election, but didn't have to be done. When we did have money, I made sure it was used on council items such as improvements at Glen Pond, or in my ward, we had no bins in Thistle Hill area, so it's a shame we don't still have that money for council priorities. As said, there's no data on public attendance, no data on parish council attendance in this report, and I think we should leave area committees alone. And perhaps we should let the area committees decide how often they want to meet. It could be their first item on their next agenda.
Thank you. Councillor Gibson.
I agree with much of what's been said, particularly on data, and my concern is that recommendations 3 and 4 prejudge 5. I have to say, our experience in Eastern Area Committee is wildly different to the recollection Councillor Jays has just shared, and I would strongly suggest that the review go ahead, and I would strongly support us not having area committees, certainly in the East where we are all parished. I would point out that there is a slight data inconsistency that we did have an Eastern Area Committee on a polling day within the area that took away almost all of our active campaigning councillors, and so that rather impacted our attendance statistics, as you might expect. But that is a factor to be considered. And as previously discussed, I think it is not appropriate to make a prejudgment on the number and the value add of the chairs before we do a full review. We should do the full review. We should do it quickly. It is my personal view that they meet too often, in that 0 would be the optimum number, and it is my strong view that the public purse is not well represented by the hours I spend chairing Eastern Area Committee. I do some extra work. It is not that value of amount of extra work, but that is my personal view, which would come out through the review, I would hope. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wise.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Councillor Gibson largely beat me to it there. I just feel that 3 and 4 does sort of predetermine 5. I do support a review, and I would like it done quite quickly. And I think, again, that was something that my colleague Councillor Harrison called for. I'm not quite so sure I agree on the timescales of it being done immediately before annual council, but I do think it shouldn't be something that drags on for a whole year. And what I would like it to be is not something that just looks at the effectiveness of the area committee's past experience. It should look at what could an effective forum like that look like. I think, obviously, I'm talking from my perspective of attending my area committee, so similar to Councillor Jays, it's probably a different experience than some of the other area committees. It's a difficult one for me because I don't really know what the answer is that addresses the issues for those areas that are largely parished or entirely parished, particularly for Eastern Area that has a town council that is very active, and it requires a lot of engagement from the local district councillors as well as the town councillors. So I don't know what the answer is that is something that is suitable for all of the areas, which is why we need to have a full review, in my view, that looks at that. So I would be quite happy with that. And just while I've got the opportunity, I'd just say the polling day clash for that is terrible. And there have been other instances of meetings clashing with polling day. And I just think in a period of low turnout in particular, we really should not be doing that in future at all. But I've made that point before. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Last online.
Thank you, Chair. Just really want to highlight a few things. I think the area committees, in principle, are a good idea, but I do think they need a bit of a steer. I do think that they need some form of direction as to what they should be doing on tasks with. I mean, you're going to be signing off empowering you in the agenda, which is an excellent piece of work that's been done. And that gives an overview of where deprivation and issues are within our borough. And I think that there should be more focus on what our residents' needs are, and that we should be engaging with stakeholders. We certainly sort of in Sittingbourne have had police, and we're looking at housing and things like that, so that there are things going on. And that's, I just really feel also that to some respects that the area chairs should meet, so that at least there's a strategy across the whole borough, so that all four of us, or all four chairs, know what's coming up and what we need to deal with.
Thank you. Councillor Worcester.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry for having a second go, but they're two completely separate points. So 2.8 in the report, there is a list of concerns that have been raised in relation to area committees. I'd just like to answer a few of those points if that's possible. I know Councillor Jay's has already alluded to some of them. First point, they're not well attended by parish councillors or the public. But I'd like to throw the challenge back to Swale and say actually Swale's done such an excellent job at area committees that quite a number of the parish and town councillors that do turn up have actually gone on to become borough councillors. And absolutely, that area committee was definitely part of the reason that I definitely decided to stand myself, because of the open conversation about council work that went on at that committee. December meetings not well attended by the borough councillors. Again, that's a data issue. There is repetitive natures to agendas, with often matters being discussed which have no practical solution. I'd like to again challenge that, because quite often we find that discussion means that we're taking on more points of view. If you only consider your own opinion, then quite often there isn't a solution for your own opinion. It's collaborative work that leads to the best solutions, the solutions that reflect the needs of communities that, oddly enough, elected us in the first place. So I'm a bit disappointed to see that as being raised as a concern, because the agenda needs to be a collaboration between the chair and the officers that want to feed into that group and councillors and members of the public. That agenda is a gift, has been on Sheppey a number of occasions, quite easily. For example, the parking review that has just gone for the Shingle Bank, that had, correct me if I'm wrong, Councillor Palmer, but over 1,000 responses to that consultation. Best consultation we've had in a long time, and I would put that at the feet of the area committee on some vast level. So proving its money right there. KCC have brought numbers of consultations, including the family hub model, to Sheppey via that group, and absolutely they would have slid that under the mat quite happily if that hadn't been raised at area committee and we'd taken that on as councillors and raised that, somewhat adding to the good response that we've had recently for the Seashells Children's Centre on Sheppey. The cost of hiring halls for meetings with low attendance is not cost effective. Again, that's a data point that could have easily been brought to this meeting to prove or disprove that point. Officers are struggling to resource meetings or find items for agendas. Can I absolutely respectfully say that we are often talking about the relationship between towns and parishes and this council. We say we're making progress. Well, absolutely, there should be an item on each town and parish agenda that says, have we got anything we want to take to area committee? And then it should work backwards as well, because that is the joy of having levels of authority in the community where actually people can engage. They feel it's their system, not our system. They shouldn't feel that they elect somebody and that's it, their opinion is taken away. Absolutely not. And I will defend area committees. Mark, I agree that there should be communication between chairs, absolutely, and that could easily be done via email between. It doesn't have to be another meeting, it could easily be solved in that way. And I think we've got some excellent councillors on Swale Borough Council. If, for example, you're not keen on being a chair for an area committee, let's find councillors that do want to do it, because there are people that want to do it, they want to, push it forwards. And I definitely take the point about Faversham Council being absolutely active. That's absolutely fantastic. But Faversham has its remit, Swale has its remit. There must be a method of communication between the two, same as Sheerness and its council, and potentially, well, Sittingbourne Central doesn't have a parish, does it? Which is another reason that Sittingbourne definitely needs its area committee too. Thank you.
Thank you. Larissa?
You appear to be quite angry with me, Councillor Worcester. As it says at 2.8, these are concerns that have been raised. They are not my concerns. They are concerns that people have brought to me. And as been said this evening, not all area committees are the same. Just as an example, the repetitive nature to the agendas with matters being discussed which have no practical solution. I think if anyone can find a practical solution to the flooding in Whitstable Road, then they will be thoroughly thanked for that. It comes up at every Eastern Area Committee. There isn't a solution that we can effect. We've got so the issue is not all of the area committees are the same. The officers struggling to resource the meetings. It would be amazing if parish councils came back to the meetings to say this is what we'd like to discuss. What we do need to be very mindful of is we have less than half an officer that deals with this piece of work. And it's really important that we are able to properly resource the work that we do. And if that is 20 parish councils saying we'd like a report on this, we'd like a report on that, then someone has to write those reports. And it's really important that we have the officers that are able to do that. And that's something that we absolutely need to look at. So under this review, we can look at where we're at with parish councils, with area committees now, what the art of the possible is, and how we resource that art of the possible. And we do have the data on the numbers. On the spreadsheet that was sent, there were different tabs which haven't made it, but we have got those. We have all of the data of the costs. We have cost per recommendation. If you take the cost and how many recommendations, we've got all of that information. And as part of a full review, we will go out and talk to parishes to say, what do you find? What do you think is good? What do you think is bad? Do you think that they're beneficial? We need to find a way of talking to the public, because in lots of area committees, we have very few members of the public that come. We need to understand why that is and what could change. So I think the things that you're talking about would very well come out as part of a review that we will undertake, a full review, and bring it back to here at the earliest opportunity, but with time enough for it to be a full and meaningful review.
Sorry, Chair, just to quickly come back on that, can we replace the word angry with passionate, please? Because I'm certainly not angry. No case have you forgotten your homework. That's a one for my child, and that would be angry. This is just passionate. A good example to counter your flooding example is obviously the fact that we've now managed to get a regular report on area committees from Kent Police. Now, that didn't happen without area committee input, and that is a really good example of a repetitive agenda item that has an absolute need from Kent Police and from us to feed into our partnership relationship there, and there is an absolute opportunity. And a good example of that is that Sittingbourne have had an action plan running for ASB, and that work could have actually sat nicely within the area committee's remit. And that is a developing relationship, not just with Kent Police, that's a developing relationship with British Transport Police as well. So I do take your point, potentially about flooding for areas, but there are certainly some conversations that happen at Swale that could definitely be considered repetitive, but if they're looked at with creativity, if they're looked at with passion, not anger, there is some real progress that can be made that doesn't involve any budget spend from us in perpetuity.
I think we get the message. Thank you. Councillor Chris Palmer.
Thank you, Chair. I think Councillor Baldock and Councillor Worcester have hit the nail on the head on the agendas. The successful outcomes at area committees, for example, Councillor Baldock's loneliness project was well attended when he first brought it up by all the parish councils in that area committee. The Seashells project that was affecting the island, that was brought up at the Sheppey Island one, very successful, inundated with support and members of the public and councillors from towns and parishes. And I think a lot of the time, the agenda, for example, might have KCC transport, for example. I went to 2 area committees for that one, and I think there are a lot of members of the public that think, KCC transport, they're going to tell us all this stuff and still do what they want at the end without considering what we have said or what we have asked for. We've got a very important subject with devolution coming up, and I think that is an opportunity to get the public involved, a way of telling them what's going on once we all know what's going on. And I think it would be a bit premature to start disbanding the area committees with such a big and important thing coming up with the devolution. Thank you.
Thank you. And just to be clear, it's more about the local government reform than anything else. So, devolution
it's
being
the
a separate...
stuff that's in the public domain that is worrying residents. You know, things that are topics. You know, like the loneliness project and the Seashells and devolution.
Thank you. Councillor Jays.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's worth noting we've already spent the average length of a standards committee just on this item, but I'd like to see us strike out recommendation 3 and 4. So I propose we...
Right, you've heard the proposal for an amendment on the floor. Does anybody want to speak to it? Okay, those in favour? Those against? Abstentions? So that amendment is carried. So now we return to the substantive item, which is to vote on the amendment that we had. Yeah, I'm quite prepared to take it together. Yeah, those two. Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I said right at the start that not enough consideration was given to how things would work, and area committees was one of them. Sometimes the people who are helping and advising don't have any more experience than maybe the councillor that's just got elected. So a lot of the stuff that, a lot of advice that you are given as members might be coming from online, blah, 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 as opposed to lived experience. And these area committees remind me of some of my training, management training years ago. In fact, this was meetings, bloody meetings, and then more bloody meetings. Larissa's smiling, she probably knows them. Well, it's the Monday morning meeting. Yeah, but what's it to discuss? Well, it's the Monday morning meeting, but don't we have an agenda? Don't we have a time frame? No, it's the Monday morning meeting. Well, these are the area committees. They did used to be very structured, very owned by local people. I mean, not the latest iteration. As I say, I don't think they were thought through enough. The police used to be a regular invitee to our area committees. The police used to come along once a quarter and give an update if they had one. The fire people came along. Lots of different representatives.
Right, can I just interject for a second? So what we're talking about now is the two things that are in front of us. So I obviously missed your hand earlier.
Review of area committees.
yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I'm talking about. Review of area committees. I'm actually saying, you know, they should have been done in the first place, to be fair. But people need to give proper consideration, real proper consideration, not just, oh, we want this. When there are, let me think.
Chairman, this is really off point. This is not to carry out a review right here and now. It is to decide whether or not we want a review to be carried out.
And I'm speaking in favour of a review being carried out. And I am saying that sometimes when there are issues which, let's man the barricades, like we've had a fortnight of the town centre being closed for pedestrians and we don't like it in the middle of winter, January. So let's rock along to the area committee, 40 of us, and actually intimidate councillors into backtracking on their 6-month trial into a 2-week trial, right? You know, 40 people rocked along. That was a big issue for them. Shopkeepers, by the way, not residents. Residents loved it. The shingle bank issue, vast majority of those weren't actually residents of Swale, were they, who rocked along to that meeting? They were camper van owners, some very responsible ones. It's a big issue. My point is, Chair, that I think it should be about issues of interest to local people. To be fair, the shingle bank was a very we've got it coming up. You know, I know that committee has done a lot of work on it. But the interest from residents was they didn't want to be intimidated enjoying the facility of the seafront. So when there are issues, controversial issues, you will always get a lot of attendees. Don't think that is engagement. That is, well, he who shouts the loudest gets what they want. So the need for a review is well past. I don't think it should take forever and a day, though.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Perkin, please.
Thanks. Just very quickly, there seems to be some view that the previous chairs and current chairs of the Eastern Area Committee just don't really know what the public care about. But actually, there's been quite a lot of really controversial items that have been brought to the Area Committee to try and get people to attend. There has been workshops with the public. Myself and Janet Dart sat down for a couple of hours to go over how we could make it better. We have tried umpteen numbers of ways to encourage people to come to it. People are just not interested in the area committee in the eastern part of the borough. And yes, absolutely do a review of it, but it's not through lack of trying or lack of understanding of what's happening or lack of interest from the chair. It's been like pushing water uphill to try and get people there. So I just wanted to defend our position a little bit.
I don't think you need to defend that, Councillor Perkin. I've sat and listened personally to the repetitious discourse that has been I'll leave it there in case I incriminate myself, but there we go. Okay, so the recommendations before us are... You've got 3 seconds.
I want longer than 3 seconds, Chair. We haven't reached a conclusion on recommendation 2. We don't know what's going forward. We're reducing from 5 to 4 or 4 on one model to a
that amendment went through.
We didn't decide what the details of recommendation 2 are. That was recommendation 1. So we don't know what committee... So we've agreed that we're going to reduce, but we haven't agreed how we plan to reduce, because we didn't take option 2. Option 2 would have combined community and leisure with health and housing. We haven't reached a conclusion on how we're divvying it up. We could pull up the responsibilities of all 4 committees and now sit here and work out what goes to committee 1, what goes to committee 2, what goes to committee 3. We don't know the names of the committee. It's very poorly thought out. We've struck out recommendation 3 and 4, but we have recommendation 2, and we have not reached a conclusion of recommendation 2.
Point of order, Chairman. This is only a recommendation, so we can thrash that out at full council, which would be fun. Or you might want to...
I'm just going to bring the Chief Executive in at this stage.
So the paper that went to Constitutional Working Group suggested the amalgamation of health and housing and community and leisure. That was also suggested in the room this evening. I can't recall by whom. For the paper for full council, it will have the reduction of that, and there will be some options that full council can consider. The main one being the recommended one will be the reduction, the amalgamation of the two committees, which was the original report that went, and there will be any other options. Other options are
Sorry, just point of order. We are not recommending the recommendation that came from CWG, so we cannot implement suggestions that were part of the original proposal under an amended option, which that's doing
I'm
that.
not suggesting that, Councillor.
So I don't see how we can have any proposals.
Point of order, Chair. I'd like to make a proposal that the recommendation is the amalgamation of housing and health and community and leisure. Thank you.
Spoke to the amendment.
We've got an amendment there. Does anybody wish to speak to it? Councillor Baldock?
Yeah, we haven't had any discussion about what we want. Now we're going to decide that we're going to drop one committee in 1 year, and in a year's time we're going to drop another committee, and we're deciding which ones without any review. This is an unnecessary amendment. What you need to do is try and work out some options that will be taken forward to the full council that can actually have some discussion. Tonight we've chosen an option that doesn't give a mandate. We can't just create one with no discussion. This is just policy on the hoof. We're just running around, putting our hands up here, suggesting things there. That isn't how councils should operate. This is just like, lucky dip.
Okay, anybody else wish to speak to it?
It feels like we're being rushed into that decision now, because that's not the recommendation that was put on the table. I did say about an alternative option was that we go with our 3 heads of service in the Regeneration and Neighbourhoods Directorate. We have this proposal on the table, but is it the right one? Looking at lengths of meetings, we're going to be sitting there for over 3 hours if we go by the average length of health and housing combined with community and leisure. We're approaching 3 hours here now, but this seems to be rushed, and we're not making a recommendation to full council. Well, perhaps we are with this amendment, but is it the right one? As said, it's done on the hoof.
Thank you, Councillor Gibson.
Just to clarify my understanding, that Councillor Wise's proposal is the outcome of the paper that was presented to the Constitution Working Group, but that was not chosen by them. So that work has been done and has been discussed previously. It simply was not the recommendation that came to us tonight. And I entirely agree with Councillor Baldock that making policy on the hoof is not optimal, and his group should probably stop doing it. Thank you.
Thank you. So, we've heard the proposed amendment duly seconded. Are those in favour? Those against?
7.
Okay, so Chairman's casting vote and I'm voting for. Thank you.
I'd now like to speak on the item in general, as I would like to start before we work our way through recommendations. Chair, I fundamentally disagree with these recommendations. We set up service committees to give all members greater say, and this will rein in and stifle debate. We get some of our best public attendance at service committees as we do on our area committees. On average, each member currently sits on 2 service committees. These recommendations will reduce this eventually to 1 service committee, with 2 members missing out entirely from service committees. The current committees already cover a diverse range of areas. I think we've got our 5 areas of focus right. The corporate plan even highlights these 5 areas. Having 3 committees plus P&R would give each member 1 service committee, and to bundle them into 2 committees eventually, I believe would be wrong. It would be less democratic, with members having less say. It would lead to later meetings for the new committees, as the last recommendation has shown. Combining community and leisure with health and housing would, following this document, say that we'd average over 3 hours. We'd have to extend standing orders. I thought agendas were meant to be set to meet standing orders. This one tonight certainly isn't one.
It may have been.
Fair enough. It'd lead to later meetings, and it could mean that meetings finish without adequate discussion on items as it gets too late, and that risks bad decision. And we've seen in the past some councillors skip out on later items. It's happened routinely, especially on planning. The later items, suddenly you've lost 2 or 3 members. Service committees are just getting to their stride, and now members want to cut them. It's ridiculous. For proper oversight and scrutiny, we need to keep the 5 committees. The scrutiny isn't just carried out at the meetings, it's also carried out at the chairs and lead officers one-to-one, as mentioned in the corporate plan. To cut the committees down would limit the council's effectiveness. Perhaps it is some members have grown tired of these meetings. I note a massive lack of attendance of opposition councillors attending the pre-meetings until this calendar year. If councillors no longer wish to do the work and don't want to sit on service committees, they don't have to sit on service committees, or better yet, they can resign if they don't want to do the work of a councillor. There is no proposal to appoint lead members to monitor areas that are cut. Even some areas now need special focus. No surprise, I'm going to mention comms. Mid-Kent services are rarely talked about, and yet they're a massive percentage of our budget. Only last month, proposals like these were rejected at budget. The proposal places committees cuts across more than place work, if we move eventually to place and communities. 3 committees plus P&R would be better, reflect the area of our heads of service. And if we cut to 2, we still have 1 head of service that would have to be jumping between the 2 committees. If we're talking about getting our staff to work less hours, less meetings, the 2 committees doesn't work in the long run. It should be the 3. I think we need to see, with the ongoing, the waste contract needs better monitoring to divide up the committees. It still isn't working, and we still haven't seen the unicorns promised.
Thank you.
Was that 3 seconds or 3 minutes, Chair?
10 minutes, I think. Councillor Perkin.
Yeah, I take exception to the accusation that there are councillors that don't want to do the work just because we're looking to reduce the amount of committees that we have so that it's more efficient both for our staff members and for members. I think it's actually a lazy argument to make. It's perfectly possible for a councillor to do just as much work while sitting in 1 meeting as it is for them to sit in 2 meetings and do that work. We might as well, save ourselves the time that we spend talking to each other and instead actually just get on with the work that's at hand. I also dispute the fact that scrutiny is done properly and effectively within the committees. As always, as for the last couple of years, I've said we need a scrutiny committee. I stand by that now. The Local Government Association response said that scrutiny does not work effectively within our committee system as it is at the moment. So why are we using scrutiny now when we voted against having a scrutiny committee previously, and now using it as a reason to have more committee meetings where the scrutiny is actively said not to work? So it's incredibly frustrating to hear councillors talk about members not wanting to be in the room and not wanting to do the work and not wanting to turn up and dipping out early. But the point is, this is going to make things more efficient. It's not about reducing the amount of work that councillors do. It's about using their time more efficiently and using officer time more efficiently. So actually, the points that I raised are not the case. And I just feel like actually we need to talk truthfully about what the intention of these changes are and not bluster through them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I'll take you very quickly, Councillor Watson.
I will be very quick. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I feel quite insulted, actually, that someone would say that I'm not working as hard as I should be, that if they don't feel that I'm making the full commitment. When it comes to scrutiny, Housing and Health Committee has been complimented on the fact that we scrutinise the documents that come before us, and we're very proud of that fact. And I agree with everything that Councillor Perkins just said. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, so I'll take this one to the vote then. Those in favour? It's just the substantive motion, so that is the proposed amendment and the 2 proposed amendments. Yeah. Yes, please.
So the proposed recommendation to full council is to recommend to full council to take a two-stage approach to reduce the service committees from policy and resources committee and 4 service committees to policy and resources 2 committees and 2 committees by reducing the service committees by 1 in the municipal year 25-26 and by further reduction of 1 in the municipal year 26-27. Recommendation 2 to achieve this in 25-26 by amalgamating Health and Housing Committee, Housing and Health Committee and Leisure and Environment and Leisure Committee. Communities and Leisure Committee, sorry, not Environment Committee. Then 3 and 4 are struck, and then to request the Chief Executive undertakes a full review of the effectiveness of area committees, working with area committees, parish councils and the public, and report back to the Policy and Resources Committees in the municipal year 25-26.
Can we have a recorded vote, please?
Yeah, just before we do,
Mr.
we need to get the numbers first. Councillor Hunt.
I was just going to ask, do we have to do all this together? Can we not do 1 and 2 together and then 5 together, because they're completely different things that we're looking at, really?
Yeah, yes, you did. Yeah, I'm quite happy to take them separately.
So 1 and 2 have already been voted on.
Councillor Baldock, are you suggesting a recorded vote for each individual one? We're going to take them separately.
Well, have we already voted on 1 and 2?
Not substantially.
Yes, we have, yeah.
Not substantially.
As amendments, we vote them as amendments.
Yeah, a recorded vote on each one, I think it's needed. But I think you can roll 1 and 2 together.
Have we got sufficient there to support for that, for a recorded vote?
Mr. Chairman, should not, in a procedural motion, the person moving said procedural motion not have already taken part in the debate? That was my reading of the rules.
Right, before we go any further, I need to extend standing orders. Yeah. So those in favour of extending standing orders, please show your hands. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 9. Those against? Abstentions? Right, so that's carried. So we're extending standing orders. Thank you. Right, so for amendment number 1, Councillor Marchington. Oh, sorry, Councillor Baldock.
Against.
Councillor Marchington. Councillor Charles Gibson.
4.
Councillor Tim Gibson, 4. Councillor Harrison. 4. Councillor Hunt.
Against.
Councillor Jays.
Against.
Councillor Watson.
4.
Councillor Lehman.
Against.
Councillor Perkin.
4.
Councillor Chris Palmer.
Against.
Councillor Richard Palmer.
Against.
Councillor Ashley Wise.
4.
And Councillor Worcester.
4.
That's 7-7, so it's my casting vote, and I'm voting for. Thank you. Number 2. So those in... Oh, no. Have we got another sheet for me?
No, I've got another pen.
Thank you.
Chair, are we now voting
that's
on
carried.
proposal 5?
Sorry?
Are we now...
Yeah,
vote-
on...
Okay.
Yeah, on 2. Yeah, this one here, to agree the configuration. Right, so this is to agree the configuration of the committees. Sorry?
It's recommendation 2 as amended, it was read out.
Yeah, a recommendation 2 as amended. Yeah. So, Councillor Baldock.
Against.
Councillor Marchington. Councillor Charles Gibson.
For.
Councillor Tim Gibson, 4. Councillor Harrison. Councillor Hunt.
Abstain.
Councillor Jays.
Against.
Councillor Watson.
For.
Councillor Lehman. Councillor Perkin.
For.
Councillor Chris Palmer.
Against.
Councillor Richard Palmer.
Against.
Councillor Wise.
For.
And Councillor Worcester.
For.
I get that 9. That's 9 for. 1, 2, 3, 4 against and 1 abstention. So that's carried. Thank you. So item 3, which was to... recommendation. I'm moving to recommendation 5. Apologies, which is the amendment.
No amendment, it was just a review.
Ah, you're right. Yes, the amendment was to review, wasn't it? So, okay, which is to request the Chief Executive undertakes a full review of the effectiveness of area committees, working with area committees, parish councils, and the public. Report back to Policy and Resources Committee in the municipal year 2025-26. So, those in favour?
No, it's a
Ah, sorry, it's a recorded vote. Sorry. Councillor Baldock.
For.
Councillor Marchington. Councillor Charles Gibson.
For.
Tim Gibson, 4. Councillor Harrison. Councillor Hunt.
For.
Councillor Jays.
For.
Councillor Watson.
For.
Councillor Lehman.
For.
Councillor Perkin.
For.
Councillor Chris Palmer.
For.
Councillor Richard Palmer.
For.
Councillor Wise.
For.
And Councillor Worcester.
For.
Thank you. So that's unanimous. That passed. Thank you. Right, we now move on to item 10, which is the Constitution update.
Need to find my papers after all that excitement. So, thank you, Chair. Members, I'm sure, will be familiar with the nature of this report, a number of which have come to this committee. The Constitution Working Group looked at 3 potential amendments to the Constitution last week, in fact, quite recently, in order to improve clarity, remove any errors, and generally make the document better and more efficient. With the Chairman's permission, I'd like to invite Joanne Johnson to actually speak to Amendment 1.
Thank you. Yeah.
Chair. Thank you, Robin. Good evening, members. Yes, so it's Amendment 1 that I'll be speaking to this evening, which is recommendations for changes to the scheme of delegation in relation to regeneration, economic development and property. The genesis of this paper is Economy and Property Committee back in December last year. That committee reviewed and approved the additions shown in red and the deletions shown as struck through that you have as Appendix 1 to the papers. Constitution Working Group, as Robin said, then reviewed these last week. They were happy with everything that Economy and Property Committee endorsed, but added in 2 lines highlighted in blue, which is about certain delegations following engagement with members. So this is the first time that the scheme of delegation in relation to Region ED and property has been reviewed since we moved from the Cabinet to committee system. There were a few main aims of the exercise. One was synthesis and better reflection of the priorities of what we do and to tighten some wording. Second aim was around filling in some gaps. So there are some areas where the Constitution was silent on particular tasks that as head of service I undertake, and we felt it would be sensible to fill in those gaps. There is one omission that we recommended is a delegation for all heads of service, which is to develop and submit funding bids for external investment. None of the heads of service actually have a delegation to do that, and we felt it would be sensible for all of us to have that clarified. We looked at changing some of the values. So the values for when disposals come to committee and when leases come to committee hadn't been reviewed for a good number of years. So we've proposed to shift those values up slightly so that the same things as came to committee previously still come, but to obviously reflect inflation over the years. And then the final change is a delegation that originally sat with me to apply for planning permission. Following the amalgamation of some of the heads of service roles, and having checked with Robin, I cannot apply for planning permission to myself. So we propose that delegation now goes to the strategic programme and assets manager who can apply for planning permission, just to have a separation of those functions, a sensible delineation. That's it by way of introduction, but happy to take any questions. Thank you very much.
Councillor Jayes.
Thank you, Chair. On 2.8.19.13, page number 8 in the supplementary report, it says following engagement with ward members. I wonder if we can also include and parish and town councils, if that'd be acceptable.
John, did you want to comment?
Thank you, Chair. That is absolutely part of the process that we carry out in any case, as we always have done with ward members. So it absolutely can go in there. It's something that we do anyway in those situations. But if members wanted it to be enshrined here, fine from my perspective. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I hate to disagree with officers, but that's not what happens. I think the parish council is still waiting to hear that New Road Community Centre is going to be sold. Oh, actually, it's been sold. So I really would like to enshrine it in the Constitution just to make sure it happens.
So, Councillor Jayes, do you want to propose an amendment to the effect of where everywhere, in actual fact, where it says following engagement with board members in this schedule, that it actually is amended to say following engagement with ward members and any relevant town and parish council?
No, I was only personally picking on that one line.
Just want the amendment in respect of 2.8.19.13.
Yes.
Okay. So do you want to propose that as an amendment for this, because this group has to recommend it to council to be adopted? So
I propose that.
Proposed and seconded. Members, those in favour?
8, 9, 10, 11.
Those against? So that's carried. Thank you, that amendment.
That's fine.
Any abstentions?
Yeah, there were. Yeah.
Sorry, yeah. Thank you.
Any other comments on that amendment?
Any other comments on that amendment? Councillor Harrison?
Not on that one, Mr. Chairman, but I had 2 marks on my pages. Number 1 was on page 8. You enter into a contract. You don't enter into. No gap. That is on page 8, 2.8.19.11. And the other point that I wish to raise on page 9. I get that it was already part of the financial regs and all the rest of it, but if you're going to appoint people to do things, somewhere here, nobody's got carte blanche, to my knowledge. There's always a budgetary constraint, so something in there to say, to appoint and retain agents to advise upon terms of sales, leases, purchases, easements, you can't just go off and, appoint anything. You've got to have cognizance of the financial restraints we're under. I don't know how you would word it, but I just wanted it to look like we had some control over finances.
John, did you want to comment on that for us? Yeah, of course you can, Lisa, yeah.
Sorry, the overarching budget frame, we have to operate within the budget framework anyway, so that's the overarching principle of how we spend our money, and so that would fall under that provision, regardless of the delegations that were given.
Thank you. Members, any other comments? Yeah. No, okay. Yeah, Councillor. Oh, Councillor Boyne, sorry.
Thank you, Chair, and apologies I'm not there this evening. I'm actually speaking to you from very dark Birmingham at the moment. Just for a query on the last point about the selling of the land, etc. Does it also? I don't think it does, but I presume in terms of if it was a parish council looking to sell an asset, are they obliged also to consult the borough council? And how much weight does that actually lead or lend to any decision? I hope not very much. But also, should we be putting a timescale of when an appropriate response should, if they choose to respond, when that should actually be? So we're not then hanging around for potential that could cause delays in the process. Thank you.
Thank you. John, did you want to comment?
Thank you, Chair. I don't know what the protocol would be for a parish disposing of an asset. I would have to defer that to others. In terms of the time frame, again, it's something that we would have in procedure notes and processes. We wouldn't necessarily seek to codify it in the scheme of delegation, but if members wanted something within there, arguably we could. Sort of looking virtually at Robin, does the delegation normally include time frames as much as it does actions? So yeah, if I could pass that back to Robin, apologies.
I mean, just in relation to the first point, I don't actually think, unless parish council standing orders have any requirement in it, that there's anything that we could say in relation to their requirements, because obviously they're sovereign bodies in their own right. So it's a matter for them whether they what their standing orders say, whether they need to consult with us or not. And sorry, in relation to the second one, Joanne, sorry, I didn't understand the bit that you were passing back to me. What was the question you were passing back?
Thank you. Through you, Chair, if I may. So the scheme of delegation refers to the actions that officers are allowed to undertake. Would it be usual to put a time frame alongside the actions, or would that usually sit in the procedure notes beneath the scheme delegation? I've got no qualms. It's just more a procedural point about where it would best sit. Thank you.
But sorry, as I understand it, what we're actually talking about is the time frame we give them to respond. So I mean, I think in relation to the delegation, if you like, the duty, if you put it that way, is to consult. And obviously, in practice, if you only gave them 5 minutes to respond, that would plainly be unreasonable. But if they don't respond until after you've done something, 6 weeks later, I think you'd reasonably say that they were given the opportunity to respond and didn't do it. So I wouldn't personally be minded to put a timescale on it in relation to the delegation. But yes, it would form part of your procedure as to how you actually operated it in practice.
Thank you. Members, any other comments? And Any of the other amendments? Someone? Okay. Okay, Amendment 2 then, any comments?
So just very quickly introduce Amendment 2, if I may, Chair. This is one I think you'll probably all be familiar with the issue, because it's with the number of groups we have now and the current amount of time within the Constitution for group leaders to speak. We actually run out of time for any members to speak in relation to the response to the leader's statement, and so the proposal basically just clips the time off pretty much everyone in relation to the amount of time they have to speak in response to the leader's statement, to allow all group leaders to speak and to hopefully allow some members to speak as well. Obviously, the CWG group have done the maths, and that there's the opportunity now for everyone to speak if you adopt this. But equally, you could consider alternative timeframes as well. It's a matter for you.
Councillor Jones.
A question for you, Leader. Do you believe 5 minutes is enough time for you to speak?
Yes, I'm happy with that. Thank you.
Okay, then what I disagree with is ordinary members. As an independent, I disagree with ordinary members being limited to 2 minutes when group leaders have the opportunity to speak 3 minutes. So I'd like to propose we up ordinary members to 3 minutes. I don't plan to speak at every full council, but to be given the opportunity is always great, and I hope I can get a seconder on that. Although I'm the only independent sitting here now, so.
Any seconders? No. Okay. Anything else on Amendment 2? Okay, thank you.
And then finally, Amendment 3, as proposed, is in relation to a matter which actually was originally started in PNR, and it was again in response to the peer review, and was a method by which the council could be more efficient in how it dealt with papers for noting. And the original proposal that came forward to PNR was rejected. It went back to the Constitution Working Group, and they put forward the proposal that's marked in red on page 12 of the supplementary paper at Roman numeral 7, to note reports presented to committee. Items for noting will be tabled at the beginning of the agenda. The chairman will list items for noting, and any member may request that an item is discussed. And there'd also be a supplementary change that this would then be a motion without notice in the Constitution generally, so that would be a more efficient way of dealing with papers for noting.
Councillor Jones.
I think this is very sensible and I welcome it.
Thank you. Councillor Worcester.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's a very efficient way of going forward. I would just like to maybe comment that that's absolutely fine for established members and those people that are used to speaking in this chamber. But for instance, when the new election cycle comes round, if it comes round, whatever, I would like there to be a clarification in new members' training that they can pull out these items for note if they do require discussion on them. Maybe that's something that group leaders can look at, because otherwise what might happen is that they don't feel confident enough to say, actually, I've got a question about this report coming forward. So I think it's a little bit of a rock and a hard place, but I think if we maybe talk about that for new members training, that might be a way forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, members, so we'll...
In which case, because actually the proposal, there's one recommendation to agree the amendments at Appendix 1 and recommend to Council their incorporation into the Constitution, and realise that the taxonomy of that's going to get quite painful, because you have actually made some amendments to the amendments, and so I wonder if one of you would be kind enough to propose an amendment to that recommendation, which is to agree the proposals further to the amendments made at the PNR Committee at Appendix 1 and recommend to Council for their incorporation into the Constitution.
Councillor Harrison, thank you. A seconder? Thank you, Councillor Jones. Those in favour? Yeah. That's unanimous. Okay.
Chair, sorry, can I just ask Monitoring Officer to clarify what he is referring to by taxonomy, please? I don't understand that phrase. I'm looking forward to being educated this evening. Thank you.
The words in the sentence. The syntax, if you will.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it was a meritorious argument. Sorry.
So, are we on the substantive now? Is it?
I think we can probably accept that the unanimous vote on the amendment carried it, can't we?
Okay. Thank you. Right, we move on to item 11, which is overnight parking on the Isle of Sheppey.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Committee. The issues arising from overnight parking at various locations in Sheppey has been discussed a couple of times at the Community and Leisure Committee. Having agreed to implement a charging scheme at their last committee and considering public consultation, this report asks to allocate the funding and propose the amount to charge per night to full council so it can be included in the council's fees and charges. There is a third recommendation which, following a discussion at the committee around needing to consider different areas where there may be displacement, we need the ability to be able to respond to that fairly quickly. Examples being Barton's Point car park, Ship on Shore, Little Oyster car park, etc., where these overnight stays may be displaced. So the third recommendation is to delegate to myself to progress the required traffic orders to protect those the areas that we discussed, i.e. Shellness and Shingle Bank, but also to respond should we need to quickly in relation to displacement issues. Obviously, the good thing with the traffic order process and legislation is that when I'm advertising the traffic orders, that's an element of consultation in that. So should we receive large opposition to that, I would need to come back to you guys anyway. So it doesn't mean I can make blanket decisions across the borough by giving me that delegation. So hopefully that just allows us to respond a bit quicker and respond to the committee's view that they would like it implemented as soon as possible. Happy to take questions.
Thank you. Councillor Jays.
I'd like to propose the recommendations as they are.
Councillor Worcester.
I would like to propose a change of wording to recommendation 3, please. And I've never done that before, so you'll have to bear with me, because I don't know how to do that. Okay. So, you have to help me out here, but Martin, I completely understand this is your area, absolutely, but through all of these conversations with members of the public and with committee, it's not just about enforcement to make sure people move on. It's about enforcement and welfare and making sure this council is completely open about its obligation to the people who are obviously presenting as needing more help in that area. There must be something in these recommendations that reflects that, because that's been a big part of our conversation regarding this item. And you might say, actually, it's got no place in this item, I agree, but when I was reading recommendations, it struck out at me that we're forgetting about maybe 40% of the conversations we've had around this item.
Yeah, I mean, I feel that was discussed at length at the Community and Leisure and dealt with there, so I think it was very clearly minuted that members wanted us to take due regard to the welfare of those that we're moving on. It was covered in the report, so I think tonight is about the business of implementation rather than revisiting the Community and Leisure, but happy to take a view from the committee on that.
Thank you. Councillor Gibson.
I'm happy to second Councillor Jay's proposal that we accept it as it is. I agree with Councillor Worcester, that was a large part of our conversation, but this, as I understand it, the reason we are discussing the same thing again is because this is the money, not the morals of it, which Councillor Worcester spoke on with far more knowledge than I could possibly have at the time.
Sorry, can I come back on that as I was named, if that's all right? I do accept that, but there is also money involved in that welfare support decisions. So, for example, I absolutely take the point that we have discussed it at community, but at no point have we brought that discussion any further forward to say exactly how we're planning on supporting that welfare, because that will take officer and time and resources from this community, from this council. But I absolutely accept this is about the business issue, so I'm happy to bring that up elsewhere, but I will need guidance to do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
So just to say, actually, as I say, you originally said that you wanted to propose an amendment to the recommendation, but I think actually you've asked a question, and whilst you're not necessarily entirely satisfied with the answer, you're no longer proposing an amendment. Is that correct?
Yes, happy to that. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Councillor Palmer.
Yeah, I'd like to thank the officer officer and the committee for what they've done, and there's been a lot of hard work on this, and it has been challenging. However, I do sometimes think that maybe the £15 charge might cause more problems than it's worth. You're more likely to get more displacement with a £15 charge. Where a lower charge, you might get more compliance and not so much displacement. So there could be an extra cost. And you may have to think about reducing the cost down, I think, to £5. And there you're more likely to get compliance and more attendance there than you would. And you might finish up with more problems owing to displacement. So my proposal would be to change that recommendation to £5 per vehicle per night at those locations mentioned. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Chris Palmer. Okay, so those in favour? Sorry. Does anyone want to speak on it first? Right, those in favour? Those against? No abstentions, so that falls. Thank you. So back to the substantive motion, which was proposed by, seconded by Councillor Charles Gibson. Those in favour? Those against? So that's carried. Thank you very much. We're now moving on to item 12, empowering you, the community development strategy.
Thank you, Chair. The Empowering You in Swell document is the new community development strategy proposed for the borough. It's been developed following consultation with the public and key partner agencies, and we asked the committee to note the Empowering You strategy, which has been ratified by the Community Leisure Committee, and recommend to full council for formal adoption. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Charles Gibson.
Thank you, Chair. Very happy to propose we note this. I spoke at length at Community and Leisure at it, and many of my changes have been included, so I'm very pleased to see that. So thank you, officers, for all the work and for staying with us for 3.5 hours to get to this point.
Thank you. Councillor Jones.
I'd like to second, but I'd also like to, again, thank the officers. Charities and partners are already using this document. I was in a meeting earlier today with one of our local charities on the island. They're already using this document and data. And I think it's a great resource and a great strategy.
Thank you. So, anybody else want to speak to it? Yes, Councillor Perkin.
Yeah, just very briefly, I did ask that we put some information about breastfeeding initiation and sustainability, and I don't think that's been included. I'm happy for it not to, because it's for expediency, I think we need to pass the document, but if that could be a focus moving forward on what we do, I think that would be really helpful.
So those, Councillor Harrison.
Yeah, I better say this. Excellent report, and I think it's going to be really, really. Elliot's just said it's been used by community groups. It's going to be used by an awful lot of people going forward. Are we also sharing it with our partners in the public sector?
Steph, do you want to comment on that?
Yep, certainly. As soon as it's approved by full council, then yeah, we will certainly be looking to sort of promote it more widely that exists and share with key partners.
Thank you. So I'll take it to the vote. Those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you, Steph, and sorry you've had to wait on so long. Members, I'm going to need to extend standing orders again just to get us through, probably only for...
Agreed.
So, thank you. The next one is the safeguarding policy, and it's in your hands again, Steph.
Yep, thank you. So the safeguarding policy has recently been refreshed, and the report details the amendments that have been made. This committee is asked to note the Housing and Health Committee decision to approve the policy with the changes and to also review its frequency to be biannual. So this committee is therefore asked to agree this refreshed policy for adoption. Thank you.
Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Chair. I'm quite happy to propose this. Obviously, I would, wouldn't I? It came to Housing and Health. vis-a-vis my earlier conversation about the minister and looking at proposals for codes, etc., including, I believe he's also looking at CRB checks, or whatever they're now called. We agreed that members voluntarily should have a CRB check. I cannot recall, and it's part of parcel of this, by the way, I cannot recall if we agreed that names or just numbers would be notified to group leaders. So that was a clarification. And secondly, do you want to tell us how many in each of the groups have actually done it? Thanks.
Thank you, sir. So it's DBS checks, and I'll hand over to Robin.
So that particular matter is within the auspices of the Standards Committee, and it is a work in progress.
Thank you. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. 4.43 refers to the Housing and Health Committee is responsible for ensuring the implementation. Does that automatically transfer if full council agree to the Community Leisure Committee, House, Helvin, whatever committee? Is that an automatic process?
I'm told by a moderator officer, yes, it does.
Excellent, but I believe we'll have to amend it after. It'd be nice to amend it after full council, so the public can understand the document better.
Thank you. So, Councillor Harrison's proposed it. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Wise, thank you. Anybody else wish to speak to it? Those in favour? Oh, sorry, Lloyd, apologies. Councillor Boren.
All I was going to just add, is my thanks to Steph and the team, and I was at the committee where it was discussed, but I'll just reiterate the point which I made at that meeting, that it's a very good report, but the one thing I wish we didn't actually ever need to have was a safeguarding policy, because I think that's a detriment to us as human beings, and I think it's sad that it is such a thing is necessary going forward, but the actual report is excellent, and it should be, as it looks like it's going to be, progressed by this committee. Thank you.
Thank you. So, members, those in favour? And unsurprisingly, that's unanimous. And my thanks to Steph as well for the work that the team have put into producing that for us. Thank you. So now we move on to item 14, which is recommendations from the Swirl JTB. Members, can I ask you to agree the recommendations? Agreed. Thank you very much. And then item 15, any recommendations from the Planning Transportation Working Group? Again, could we agree those recommendations, please? Thank you. And finally, the Forward Decisions Plan. Just for noting. Lovely. Right, thank you very much. Thank you for your forbearance and patience. Yeah, we didn't really need to. No, you're right. Safe trip back for everybody, and see you all soon. Thank you.